is accused of undermining his authority over migration.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. It is bright and early at 6 o'clock on Tuesday the 16th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Thank you for your company. Leading our news on this Tuesday morning, Rishi Sunak will claim today that the most vulnerable are paying the price for a broken international asylum system as he urges European leaders in Iceland to crack down on illegal migration.
He'll also hold talks with the head of the European Court of Human Rights in a push to reform rules that allowed judges to block deportation flights to Rwanda. It follows a speech from the Home Secretary yesterday on migration, seen as a challenge to the PM's leadership.
The head of the Royal College of Nursing will today urge the government to get the job finished and negotiate a pay deal. Her speech at the union's annual conference comes 7 days ahead of a new strike ballot, which could see nurses walking out until Christmas.
Prince Andrew has allegedly demanded a face-to-face summit with the King in the ongoing row over plans to evict him from the Royal Lodge. The Duke of York is said to be fearful the royal family might switch off utilities to get him out.
Oh, and this is unexpected for us because apparently they've extended the voting window for the Trick Awards. So we're up, as you can see there. Best multi-channel news programme.
And also, don't forget, Eamonn is nominated again for Best Presenter, having won it last year. We hope that with your help, he can retain that title. Scan that QR code you can see on the screen and have your say. We'd be so grateful. Thank you.
Yes, you're very decent people, any of you who bothered to do all of that, just on behalf of little old us. But it keeps us in employment. Thank you very much indeed. To our top story, the Prime Minister will today urge European leaders to unite to protect their borders, adding that the current international migration system is broken.
Well, during the meeting in Reykjavik, Rishi Sunak will also meet with the head of the European Court of Human Rights, where he'll push for changes to the rule that allows judges to block deportation flights.
Now, his focus on border control follows a speech by Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, yesterday, seen by Conservative MPs as a challenge to the Prime Minister's position on migration.
Well, joining us this morning is the political analyst Leon Emirali. Good morning to you, Leon. Will the Prime Minister be trying to double down on his migration policy in the wake of what many people are seeing as a bit of a undermining speech from his Home Secretary yesterday?
Yeah, quite extraordinary from Suella Braverman. It was a pitch for her credentials on why she would be the right person to tackle immigration. And I think the strange thing here is it looks as though she's setting herself up for some sort of showdown with the Prime Minister over those migration numbers. It's being reported we could be on track for record migration into the country later on this year. And
so why protest about it now if there's nothing they can do to stop the figures going up?
Well, this is what I'm trying to get to, Eamonn, is that Suella Braverman, as the Home Secretary, is the one that is in charge of the border policy, and yet she's trying to shift the blame onto Rishi Sunak. And Sunak clearly is going out to Europe today, going out to Iceland, and trying to get the European leaders on board to say, actually, this is not just a British issue. This is a global issue, in particular a European issue, when it comes to stopping the boats, and that's what his message will be today.
Yeah, and look, there's some Tory backbenchers saying, hang on a minute, isn't the role of anyone in Cabinet to be a team player? If not, get back on the back benches. So surprise about the Suella Braverman stuff. And in relation to this meeting with the European Court of Human Rights boss, he's not going to be interested in what Rishi Sunak has to say, are they? I mean, it just strikes me as he's trying to undermine the court, essentially, so that he can push through his rules for his own reasons.
Yeah.
These pyjama injunctions, as they're described, but they're not going to be having a bar of it, are they?
Well, they're probably not, Isabel, and that's why he needs to get the rest of the European leaders on board to go to the European Convention on Human Rights to say, look, this is an issue for a number of us. It's not just Britain that has the problem here. And it's quite complicated, but there's Rule 39, which is essentially stopping these deportations to Rwanda. That is the key that's the key issue, really, that's stopping the Prime Minister from implementing that part of the illegal migration bill that he's trying to pass through Parliament. So if he can't get that change, his hands are tied. And I think this is where the difficulty is, and this is where the conversation about the European Convention on Human Rights starts bubbling up again.
Is this what this is all really about, or is this Suella Braverman saying, we've all seen Penny Mordaunt and her big sword. But I can wield a sword, I can do things. Is this a leadership battle?
I think it absolutely is a leadership battle. I think she sees that there is a slight appetite on the right of the Conservative Party to have a leader who perhaps is tougher on immigration or being seen as being tougher on immigration than Rishi Sunak is. Suella Braverman clearly wants to position herself as that person. And let's not forget, she came out of nowhere. No one had heard of Suella Braverman 2 or 3 years ago, but now she is dominating politics and she is popular with the right wing of the Conservative Party.
It's interesting you say that she will be seen to be tougher on migration than Rishi Sunak is. It's not that he is or isn't. It's that he's being painted as if he isn't tough on migration. So she's stealing a march on him, isn't she?
This is it. And what I find strange about the narrative around Rishi Sunak is actually, if you look at his politics on paper, he is quite right-wing, far more so than Boris Johnson was, who was a big spender, high-tax type of politician. Rishi Sunak isn't that guy, but it's just the way in which he presents himself that perception has been able to take hold, and that's a problem for him, given the pressure of those on the right of the party.
What isn't a problem for him was his surprise visit from Zelensky yesterday. Almost all the papers covering that fantastic picture, frankly, just in terms of optics, of the two of them embracing on the field outside Chequers yesterday. That will have boosted his own sort of security position and ranking within the party. And yet, meanwhile, his predecessor, Liz Truss, off to Taiwan today to add to his undermining headaches.
I know.
What's she up to?
Well, Liz Truss going to Taiwan today and rattling the cage, if we're being honest. And I think it's very unhelpful for any former Prime Minister to be on the international stage making these kind of interventions, particularly when there is such a delicate situation that we've got in Taiwan and the relationship with China. And I think that this is exactly the kind of thing Rishi Sunak could do without when it comes to his foreign policy. It isn't just Liz Truss, former Prime Minister, causing him a headache. We see it more and more. John Major intervening on Brexit, Tony Blair intervening on a number of different issues, Boris Johnson obviously still a big character. So we've got this coterie of ex-Prime Ministers that are still chipping in, and it can't be helpful if you're trying to run a government.
But there is a school of thought, just finally on the Taiwan point, that, you know, when Nancy Pelosi went across and you know, arguably she did heighten tensions with China, but the reason she was kind of able to make that trip was because she wasn't officially going in a presidential capacity. Could Liz Truss argue the same? She's not part of the government, she's not a diplomat, but she is going to raise the profile. Well, I mean, arguably she's shining a light as a former Foreign Secretary on what she sees as the most pressing challenge of our day.
Probably the worst Prime Minister we ever had. I mean, surely she's just completely a laughingstock.
I think she's freelancing, isn't she? And I think there has to be a clear message to Liz Truss, which is leave it to the grown-ups. You had your chance, and, you know, sadly, you're no longer in that position of power anymore. She's ultimately a backbench MP. So what she's doing, gallivanting in Taiwan, making lofty speeches about foreign policy, I don't know. It's not
Maybe she's being paid.
Well, I'm sure she is. I'm sure she's being handsomely rewarded for it. But she can't do that in the capacity of someone with influence in the British government.
There's some suspicions that while Suella Braverman's making speeches in a bid to become Prime Minister, Liz Truss is making speeches in a bid to be at the UN at some point in the future. Makes sense.
Maybe. And you know, Liz Truss is still a young woman when it comes to politics, and she still has a career ahead of her. So she can't move away. But
I mean, if you mentioned her name to me, I would just laugh.
And I think a lot of people on the foreign global stage will do the same. But she's obviously got desires to either go to the UN to write a book or whatever.
Look, I'll tell you what is much more relevant. As Bill Clinton would say, it's the economy, stupid. Front page of the Times, and the headline is a fifth of all taxpayers will now be in a 40p band. And I keep talking about this on the programme, that people are being penalised by the Department of Thievery, the Inland Revenue, or whatever they call themselves. What do they call themselves? HMRC.
Majesty's Revenue and Customs.
Yes, who are out there, and you think, well, this doesn't affect you, but this does affect you, because there is big unrest. This is the biggest tax rise since the 1970s. The Institute for Fiscal Studies says today that millions of teachers, nurses, electricians, you name the job, you're involved in this, are amongst 1 in 5 taxpayers who will be dragged into a tax band rate designed for the wealthy because of a 6-year freeze on thresholds. Now, however complicated it is, it affects you. You think money's tight, it's about to get tighter.
It is, and this is what economists call fiscal drag, and it's effectively a stealth tax rise. The government haven't said we're asking you to pay more tax, but that's what's happening because inflation's rising and those thresholds aren't moving. So we've got people who are earning more because money doesn't go as far as it used to, so they are being pushed into those higher tax brackets and therefore paying more tax. So this is a real problem for the government because they're having to battle cost of living. 40p tax rate used to be for those who were considered wealthy. You know, now, as you say, it is people on a number of different incomes that are going to be struggling even more as a result of this fiscal drag.
I believe it's 5 times the number of people that were paying that top-rated tax in the 1990s now being dragged into it. And the thought of nurses, as we cover regularly, in fact, I think we're going to speak to a nurse in a minute about their ongoing dispute with the government over pay. The thought of nurses having to pay 40 pence in every pound to HMRC, it's controversial.
Well, we put it out there, and does it affect you? Does it not affect you? Are you going to feel the pinch? Leon, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. Always nice to hear your perspective, your take on things. Political analyst Leon Emirali there.
Now, we're going to talk about knife crime now. This week, a national campaign on knife crime awareness aims to highlight the risks, consequences and ultimately the preventability of knife misuse.
Well, our North West of England reporter Sophie Reaper has been speaking to those trying to encourage young people to give up these sort of weapons.
They've been stabbed and they've been killed. So now one of your friends is dead.
9 years ago, Byron Heighton's brother, John Joe, was brutally stabbed to death. As a result, Byron launched the JJ Effect, dedicating his life to educating people about knives and the horrific impact they can have.
This one was taken off a 13-year-old, extremely sharp.
I've got stories of kids buying and selling knives, 3 foot, 2 foot long for as little as a £5. But then when you leave the classroom, they're all in tears, they're crying, they're coming in mass amounts, wanting photos, and oh my God, and then we get suicide emails and we get parents emailing me saying, oh my God, my child won't stop talking about that presentation, what you've done is amazing. And that was a desired effect.
Byron now works with knives every single day, helping young people to understand the danger in his own unique way.
What I say to people is don't be that person that's going to be bleeding out, screaming, please ring my mum, please ring my dad, I'm sorry, begging for forgiveness, when all that consequence of your actions that you've got yourself into have now led you to this point. Sadly, you might be dying.
They kill someone, can he go to prison? Yeah.
This week is National Knife Crime Awareness Week, and the key word here is awareness. Knife attacks can happen at any time, in any place, in a school, in a workplace, in the community. But with better education, there's a higher chance of prevention. As part of this, twice a year, each of the 43 police forces in England and Wales partake in Operation Sceptre, a national campaign focused on tackling knife crime. In Lancashire, despite figures recently decreasing, they say their work to combat this issue will never stop.
In Lancashire, we do knife crime work every week of the year. We don't just do it specifically for Operation Sceptre. But what we do is bring all of those tactics together in one intense week, twice a year.
In 2022, England and Wales saw 49,265 offences involving a knife or sharp object. It's hoped now that this campaign will encourage people to put down their knives.
If you carry a weapon, you are more likely to be involved in violence and therefore more likely to have that weapon used on yourself. And the impact of that, not just on yourself, but your families and other members of the communities, is catastrophic. So please do not do it. Seek help, speak to people around why you're carrying the weapon in the first place, and we can get you that support.
How else can this knife get you in trouble then?
For Byron, nothing can bring back his brother. But now he works to educate and prevent similar tragedies from tearing other families apart. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
You know, it makes me so angry. We talk about knife crime. What the heck was that he was holding there? It was like a pitchfork or a plough or something awful.
Double-sided.
The idea that you sit and say, I remember as a kid when you got to, 10 or 11 or something, it was a big thing. The newsagents would sell pen knives, and you would think, oh, what the heck would I have needed a penknife for? But everybody wanted a penknife to
to make a
carve wood
fire or
to do something, you know, Boy Scouty or whatever it happened to be. And I always remember my parents were, oh, you're not having one of those.
Oh, really?
Oh,
Well,
no.
we all had penknives.
Oh, you're not having that. But my word,
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at that, it is so insulting. And you basically, anybody in the vicinity of a weapon, because that's what it is. What else is it? It's not for peeling apples, you know?
Well,
so
you know,
they should be arrested.
Yeah.
They should be arrested. They should
more
be
than,
charged with
yeah.
something. Absolutely, the idea of zero tolerance. So the law is obviously not up to scratch on all of this. Knife crime continues unabated throughout the whole country, and something should be done at it, because these youngsters, when I say youngsters, up into their 20s, whatever, they're laughing in the face of authority. What the heck was that?
And,
What was it?
and you talk about youngsters. A little bit later in the programme, we'll be talking about the story of an 11-year-old that was caught carrying a knife and they were tasered. And there are questions about whether you should taser an 11-year-old or not. I say absolutely taser them.
thing.
Because, you
Poor
know,
little
just
thing.
they are children and they are misguided and in, you know, they need
Poor little
better
thing. Will he be less
care,
misguided when he
but
gets
they're
an
dangerous with
electric
a
shock up his backside, won't he?
They've got dangerous weapons, then you've got to do whatever it takes to make yourself safe.
Absolutely horrendous, and I think you know, that people are just being made fools of when you see what is available, what we term as a knife and what qualifies as a knife. Absolutely ridiculous.
It's not for peeling apples, that's for sure.
Let us know what you think. 16 minutes past 6. I mean, I couldn't even, when we were young, we tried, the greatest invention you could ever get was a potato peeler. And a thing that you stuck the potato on and then you could turn the handle and it would shave the potato. You know, I never did learn to do potatoes quite well, but that's what you use things like knives for. It's ridiculous. Top stories today on this Tuesday morning. This is what we've got for you. The government is pledging to put more British produce on supermarket shelves and plates. The proposal includes a bid to ensure farmers can get a fair price for their produce, with the Prime Minister saying that supporting food producers is essential for economic growth.
The Royal College of Nursing leader will give a speech today urging the Prime Minister to enter negotiations to end strikes. Pat Cullen will say the NHS and social care system are sailing dangerously close to the wind.
Up to 1 in 7 bus services across England could be cut if government funding isn't extended. The deal to keep services running expires at the end of June. Operators are planning to cancel or change routes, and they're required to give 6 weeks' notice, with pressure for a new agreement to be secured by Friday. So the government are getting together, they're holding a summit to say we should encourage more British produce on our plates, we should help farmers more, we should do all this. Why do we fall for all this nonsense? They could have done this any time. Why wait till now? They run British farming into the ground. They give prominence to stuff that's coming in from anywhere in the world except Britain, and now they pretend they care about farmers. They don't care. They don't care. When you go to the supermarket, do you actually seek out British produce?
Yeah, but not just British produce. I look for the stuff with the tractors on that's, you know, ethically
So it could
farmed.
be from Venezuela, but as long as it's ethical.
No. I do
just
seek out British stuff, as long as it's, you know, something that we can make here. But I also try to go for ethical, or in the case of chicken, I try to go for free range, because I really hate the thought of battery chickens. If your chicken is cheap, then it's probably been in really cruel conditions.
If your boiled egg or fried egg today looks like Isabel's dress, you're in trouble. Because that is
I like a deep orange. I like a deep orange.
That's a factory-farmed egg. So that's the colour of eggs that you think eggs should be. The yolk should be like that. But no, it should be an orange colour. Yeah, that's the way it should be.
Should we talk about Tom Hanks? Are you a big Tom Hanks fan?
Yeah, I think he's a very prolific actor.
Which films have you enjoyed him in?
I liked, what was it called? Was it called Greyhound, was it? Where he is the commander of an escort convoy ship across the Atlantic Ocean during the Second World War. Yeah, he's a good Mr. Everyman.
Was he in When Harry Met Sally?
No.
Oh.
No, who was that? That was Billy Crystal.
He did loads with Meg Ryan, though. I can't think. Did he not?
That must be a pain.
Well, anyway, yeah, Run, Forrest, Run. Forrest Gump, I love that one. Castaway, that was him.
Life is like a box of chocolates.
Sleepless in Seattle, the very one. Charlie, you saved me. Well, anyway, he's been talking about AI. A day doesn't go by without somebody talking about AI.
Yes.
And now he's saying that basically the developments in Hollywood could mean that well after he's died, new films could come out starring him.
Yeah.
Which is a heck of a thought. I mean, one day
No,
perhaps
it's not a heck of a
we could
thought.
be
I think
reading
that's the perfect...
well after we've deceased.
Well, it's the perfect use of AI, using artists. For instance, I have been to see concerts that feature Elvis Presley, that feature Frank Sinatra, that have got these holograms and whatever, and it's wonderful. It's like they're there. But I always remember my biggest movie hero of all time was John Wayne. And when he died in 1979, I thought, oh, gosh, that's the end of that. To actually think that you could bring back another film with John Wayne in it would be beyond excitement to me.
But there are lots of legal copyright issues. Imagine if that's your father, if your father is Tom Hanks, and then people are mucking about with his image and his voice without his permission because he's dead, and continuing to put him in films that perhaps he wouldn't want to be in.
Like porn films or
making money
something.
out of it off of the back
Like
of him.
nudity and things.
Well, I wasn't thinking porn.
Were
but
you not?
No, you know, he's a bit above that.
Tom Hanks in porn? No.
No.
Wouldn't be an attraction, I don't think.
But, you know, you can see where the legal loopholes and minefields come in. So let us know your thoughts about AI and movies. Is it a good thing
Yes,
or
it
is
is
it
a good
bad
thing.
thing?
I mean, they have done
think it's a bad
things
thing.
like they've Peter Cushing in Star Wars has been
Is that
brought
AI
back.
or is that just...
It doesn't matter, he's
Doesn't
brought
matter.
back. And Oliver Reed in Gladiator was brought back. You get the idea.
Yeah.
So listen, I think Tom Hanks is probably right. They will keep making films with him in them when he's dead. Character parts, probably cameo parts, maybe more than main roles and all that sort of
I'm
thing.
not sure I'd be comfortable with that. Anyway, let us know your thoughts. GBNews.
Why would you not be
GBNews.uk.
comfortable with that?
Because you don't have control. You're
Why-
dead. So how do you
Well,
know
why
if
would
you think that film...
Why would you
that
wake
film-
up this morning and say, do you know what, if they brought back a film with Tom
I
Hanks
didn't just
in
come
it
up with that.
instead,
We were asked to discuss it, and now I've taken a view, Eamonn. Stop being
with that.
difficult. I'm
I
just
will
saying,
not
if
be
I died
comfortable.
and my name and my voice and my body and my character was put in films without my blessing, I would find that weird.
I'd look after your image rights.
No, exactly.
I
Who would
make
be in charge? Because if it was you, I would definitely not be comfortable.
You definitely what?
You'd be putting me in all sorts of rubbish films.
Rubbish films. I'd be making the
I'd
best of
be
your
on Webster.
attributes. Yes. This is Isabel as you haven't seen her before.
No.
Her in her big, thick white tights. You've got all the things that people don't know.
Should we talk about that? We've been doing this show together for how long?
Oh, it seems like
year and a
years.
half.
Oh.
And just yesterday morning, the makeup artist and Eamonn both sat
Yes.
and expressed disgust at the tights that I wear all the time, and no one's told me they hate them. I try to I'm quite an olive skin person. I try to match my tights to my face. Apparently,
Like
I'm
medical. They're like medical. Do you know when someone has big, thick, bulging varicose veins or hairy legs?
not. I would show people my tights, but I've got trainers on.
But
I don't know how to do this without
No, don't,
flashing.
it's
They're not
indecent.
that bad. Anyway.
So you say. But if they cover up your hairs, that's a good thing.
Eamonn,
But I'm just saying, if they
it's
do,
me.
if they keep those veins succumbed to tied down, that's a
Guys,
good thing. That's a
what
very
I
good
am
thing.
paid to be subjected to is
23. Well, worse, you could be working with Schofield, couldn't you?
stop.
Could be worse. You know, at least
Let's
we're
take a
real.
break.
At least we're real. We don't
This
go
is
through
true
all that.
friendship.
What does it say on the mirror? Give me the
do you
mail
know what?
today. Give me
The mail?
Give me the mail.
Oh, here we
Whatever
go,
This,
and I'll
what
get-
does this word make? After this farrago of fakery, it will be a miracle if they last the week. That's what they say there. Whatever a farrago. Farrago sounds like a van made by Ford.
I have to say, there's a whole...
Ford Farrago.
all the papers obviously talking about Holly and Phil this morning and what it takes to be a TV couple. And I screenshotted a piece in the Times this morning and sent it to Eamonn because it made me laugh. They were talking about this morning, but it also extends to breakfast. They were talking about the heroic amounts of bonhomie that is required between people that get up early. It said, additionally expected to look good, conduct examinations of dozens of guests and feel warmth towards your co-presenter is to ask a lot. Getting up in the dark is grim and going to bed early is dull.
Yes, it does.
And I just screenshotted
But no,
it and sent it to him.
the worst is to be part of a farrago of fakery.
Yeah,
That's
at
the
least
point.
it's a genuine
It's the ones where if you
love-hate
say, you know
that
the way,
we have.
You know the way you're not really funny, you know, and you try to be. But I don't do the old.
No, you would definitely not pretend in any shape or form to be amused, amazed, or
Farrago of
entertained.
fakery. But there they are, that's what they do. But
Do you know
anyway,
what a Farrago is?
No, I don't.
It's like a smorgasbord.
What's a smorgasbord? What?
A smorgasbord. But in relation to, was it food, Charlie? Animal feed. So a Farrago is like an animal feed smorgasbord. A coterie, a selection.
After the selection of fakery. Well, it is. It's 2.5 hours of fakery. But there we go. 25 minutes past 6 o'clock. Welcome to GB News, where it's real as it gets. Stay with us as police launch an investigation into the tasering of an 11-year-old boy. Do you have any sympathy with that? We'll ask if police should carry the weapon. He apparently was carrying a weapon. He was tasered for it. What's your view? Next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sometimes we sit here in the morning, we think we're on our own, but then you, the viewership, the listenership, our little family community get in touch and you say hello, hi, good morning, and you pass us little jokes and things which we do see, just to let you.
Yeah, all the inbox basically saying, leave Isabel alone, her tights are lovely. But this one's saying, Sarah Wilmot, Eamonn, you're the voice of the nation. Stop. You always speak the truth, no sugarcoating. The taser comment had me laughing out loud. Thank you every day for cheering me up.
Well, we're coming to that.
We actually specifically are told not to read out the soppy emails, but I'm going to change the rules and do as other presenters do and read out all the lovely ones from now on, because we get so many.
I was listening to Vernon Kay on Radio 2 yesterday. Do you know why Vernon Kay is the new Ken Bruce?
Oh, yeah.
Vernon's very good and whatever it is. But then he just sat there and just read all these things, telling the listeners how brilliant he was.
Well, this is a technique I think people have of like self-publicity. It's like Instagram, you know, everyone sort of, look how beautiful I am. Now we read out.
No, I haven't got any of those. I haven't got. Are you sure?
Fantastic so much, Eamonn and Isabel. You guys make my day. You just had me crying and laughing out loud about Isabel's hairy legs. In the advert break, I did put my leg on the desk to prove to him that I do not have hairy legs. I did I not?
Okay, you mightn't call them hers.
Stop it.
Hers. They could be, they're quite harder than hairs. When a hair becomes permanent, we'll say hair.
Her. No, I'd say hair, funnily enough.
You're very bristly.
Oh, for God's sake.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying.
I'm not. Can you just clarify? This is what you do. This is his modus operandi. He insults me in the intention of making you feel sorry for me, and then I get an outpouring of love. Is that not your modus operandi?
Well, it does not work. If it wasn't for me, no one would even know you're here. Oh, don't stop that. Stop that. It's
unbelievable. This is slander. This is absolute slander.
You scratch my legs, you move against me, and it rips my trousers open. Everything is just, it's really painful sitting beside you. It's like nettles.
Oh my God.
It is. Anyway, still to come on our little programme today at 6:45. Oh, now this is very good. Look at that. Do you know what that is, Isabel?
A Dambuster.
No, it's a Lancaster, right? It's a Lancaster plane. We're going to visit RAF Scampton, where 80 years ago today, a squadron which became known as the Dambusters, set off on that mission with their bombs, their round bombs, to destroy German dams, the bouncing bombs. Look at that.
Unbelievable. Yeah, 80 years on, can you believe? Then after 7 o'clock this morning, we'll have the latest unemployment and pay figures as they're released.
That'll be
with
cheery.
predictions of a further squeeze in living standards. Well, it might be good.
Got that
you
to
never
look
know,
forward
don't
to.
preempt it.
What time's that happening at?
Oh, 7:05.
Oh, lovely. Let's find out what your nil employment prospects are and the pay situation at 7:30. Get in touch the usual ways, folks. We'd love to hear
Only in
from you.
support of me.
OK. Bye-bye. OK, so here we are. It is exactly 31 minutes past 6, and the Scottish police watchdog has been called in for an investigation after an 11-year-old boy, and that's the bit that's supposed to tug at your heartstrings there, was tasered, that's the bit that's not supposed to tug at your heartstrings, during a blade standoff at a holiday park in Esher.
Yes, it's believed the schoolboy could be the youngest person ever to be tasered by the police in Scotland. Joining us now is Oliver Lawrence, a former police officer and the host of Protect and Serve podcast. Good morning to you. Look, 11 years old, obviously a messed up 11-year-old to be wielding a knife, still a child. This is a very controversial part of the law of policing. Where do you stand?
Well, thanks very much indeed for having me. I'm very much in support of the police and their actions in relation to this. There is no lower or upper echelon in terms of when the police can taser in terms of age. It comes down to the threat assessment that they carry out against these individuals who make the erroneous decision to carry weapons that we expect our police to be able to deal with. So I am in support of police. They have a number of tactical options available to them to deal with these issues, and they make an appropriate decision very rapidly as the situation starts evolving. So I'm very much in support of the police actions with regard to a zero tolerance in dealing with what can be a very, very dangerous incident.
And Oliver, just 5 minutes ago, we had a report on this Knife Crime Prevention Week, and we can talk and we can talk about all sorts of things, but if we're not going to be serious and show people who wield knives that the police service is serious against this, I suppose we're not going to get anywhere. And tasering has got to be a resort that can be called upon.
That's exactly right, Eamonn. And I think the first thing to make note of is that police officers don't go to work wanting to engage in any sort of high-level confrontation, particularly with young people, trying to bring to a conclusion, as we expect them to, these very distressing incidents where we've got young people that seem to believe that it's appropriate to carry knives in public. There's an expectation placed on police by us, the public, that they will deal with these situations in the best possible scenario they can do, with the best training that they receive, and we ask of them to make very, very quick decisions to ensure that they maintain public safety, law and order, and they hold these individuals accountable. And I think there's a more broader conversation here with regards to then engaging with parents and guardians and caregivers of these youngsters to understand why they're making these decisions and to try and help them improve those thought processes they go through before they leave the home and make these terrible decisions.
First priority has to be to make any dangerous situation safe, doesn't it, for the police? And if a child, whoever it may be, whether it's a child or an adult, they've got to, as I say, get their hands on that weapon. But you are absolutely right. There still has to be the conversation about how it got into the hands of a child. And I frankly still feel sorry for that child. Their life will be ruined from here on out. Who knows what the implications on a young brain will be of having huge voltage passing through their body. I mean, do we even know? I suppose you can't do tests on children because that would be dangerous.
Hopefully the effect is that they won't pick up a knife again.
Well, absolutely, and I don't disagree, but I do think it's sad that it even got to that stage, and we have to, as a society, not only be tough on crime, but on the causes of crime, as the old adage goes.
No, I totally agree with that, Isabel. And you know, there are guidelines that the police are issued with in terms of some of the higher levels of risk in terms of deploying a taser on a younger person, because as their body mass decreases in terms of how young they are, there are the slim chances that can create some complications in the deployment of the taser. However, you know, police officers are human beings, they're not robots. It's very, very dangerous trying to deal with an incident where you've got an 11-year-old child who in that incident was being spoken to by police. They were trying their best to communicate with this youngster, to reason with them, to ask them to put down the weapon. But again, non-compliance, and a point that, you know, the police have to make a judgment call as to a line in the sand to protect the public, to make a decision and to end an incident with a less than lethal use of force, as is the taser, and ensuring the safety of the public and, importantly, themselves as well, trying to bring that matter to a conclusion. You know, the youngster wasn't hurt. You know, tasering is very unpleasant. I've been tasered myself as a trained police officer. It's not designed to be pleasant, but remembering that it is the amperage that causes serious injury and electrocutions, and the amperage that comes out of a taser is very, very minimal, in fact, below safety standards. So it's an effective tool in bringing dangerous incidents to a conclusion very, very quickly.
That's Oliver Lawrence. Oliver's a former police officer. He's got a podcast. It's called Protect and Serve. Oliver, really appreciate your take on things. Thank you very much indeed. We'll ask you at home what you think. Is a taser ever justifiable in the case of someone who's a child? If they're wielding a weapon. And we talked about knives. What determines a knife? A knife can be that size, or it could be the length of this table.
And you know, we look at America with horror and all that goes on with gun crime. Knife epidemic in this country is as bad. It is claiming so many lives. It's awful. Right, stay with us. Coming up, the Home Office is predicting a sharp rise in immigration. We're discussing that issue in the papers with Kevin Schofield and Davinia Taylor next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
So Dubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Emails are coming in thick and fast. Eamonn and Isabel, your spontaneity is so attractive and amusing. You bring viewers right into the room with you. Eamonn, you sail a little close to the wind when you playfully taunt Isabel, and she has a heart of gold to let you get so nearly away with it. And there's one more I want to
She's
read.
a heart of gold?
Yes, I do.
What?
There's one more. Oh, it's so difficult to find.
That's a farrago of fakery as well.
Oh, stop. Anyway, there's loads of them coming in. You two are hilarious. Anyway, you get the idea.
No,
as you were.
Us two aren't.
Oh, here we go, Jack Harry. I love
make
GB
her
News.
seem as if she's hilarious.
It makes the rest look like me when I slow dance. I love it. Anyway, we're going to do the papers now. Here are the front pages.
Yes.
Here's the Telegraph leading with a warning from the Home Office, who are predicting a sharp rise in immigration by the next election.
Yeah, so why talk about it now when they've no hope of getting it down? Next. It captures the moment between Rishi Sunak and Volodymyr Zelensky as they suggest the UK will back Ukraine's bid to join NATO.
The Times says a fifth of all taxpayers will now be in the 40p band as the Prime Minister imposes the biggest tax rise since the 70s.
And the Mail highlights Michael Gove's blast at Labour leader Keir Starmer, accusing him of undermining Brexit by granting EU citizens the vote. Joining us to go through some of these stories in more detail, the political editor at HuffPost UK. We welcome Kevin Schofield this morning, and we've got the actress and well-being guru, because that is what she is, a guru.
She's got the colour memo as well. We're matching.
Oh, yes, Davinia Taylor here this morning. Let's talk about immigration, Kevin, because Suella Braverman's brought it to the fore, and yet we hear these stories that it ain't going to get any better no matter who's running the country.
Yeah, well, it was interesting, Suella Braverman, I think, trying to get ahead of it yesterday, because we're expecting in the next couple of weeks confirmation that net migration last year was approaching 1 million. If you remember, David Cameron used to say he'd get it down to the tens of thousands, but obviously that's a hopeless task, really. But yeah, the Telegraph are saying that the Home Office has privately told Number 10 that between now and basically the next election, 1.1 million foreign workers and students will come to the UK. Now, this is a problem for Rishi Sunak because essentially at the last election the Conservatives said they would bring down immigration. In reality it's gone up. Suella Braverman was saying yesterday we've got to keep this promise, we've got to bring it down, but it looks as though, as you say, it's a hopeless task, and the Conservatives I think could really be punished pretty severely at the next election.
What percentage do you think of Suella Braverman's time is spent on dealing with net migration and bringing that down, as opposed to trying to tackle illegal immigration, which is around, 60,000 of this sort of
on the small
nearly
boats.
1 million?
Yeah, well, no, you're right. I mean, that's the one that is one of Rishi Sunak's 5 pledges, is to stop the boats. I think no one really expects that to happen before the next general election. So again, that's something else I think that will be cast against them. And you're right, I mean, given that it's one of the Prime Minister's key priorities, the Home Secretary is obviously under a lot of pressure to deal with that specific element. But you're right, that is just one small proportion of the wider immigration, because most of the vast majority of it is legal.
It's so sensitive, I'll use that word sensitive, as to how people feel about this. But Kevin, there's no doubt we do need some immigration, whether it's legal or not. And I'm thinking particularly workers in service industries. And that's everything from barbers, nail bars, through to hospitality industry, restaurants, pubs, that sort of thing. I read stories of restaurants closed in Belfast this week because they can't get the workers for it. It's been in existence for 17 years. People will say this all the time. They just can't get people in the hotel industry, for instance, to work, to change beds, to clean rooms, to do all these things that so many people here don't want to do. You sense we're in touching distance of saying, look, we can help each other out here or something, I don't know, but we just can't do without any immigration.
No, of course not. And the majority of the highest number of visas that are given to foreign workers are to work in care homes. And we need people to come to work in care homes, elderly, ageing population, more and more of us ending up in care homes. So these are vital workers. And there's a real debate going on inside Cabinet between those who say we should keep not increasing immigration, but definitely we need migrants to come to help boost the economy, and others like Suella Braverman who say, no, we've got to bring it down come what may.
Well, Davinia, The Guardian picking up on that split in Cabinet and what that means for the Prime Minister's authority. What are they saying?
Well, I mean, she's kind of been roasted by the Conservative Party and being told to stick to her day job. But I just think there's a lot of political homelessness at the moment. Both parties seem to be so beige, and she's being quite vocal in her almost like right side of the party and trying to sort of harvest those voters. I mean, she said that the left is a politics of pessimism, guilt, national division, resentment and utopianism. And what made me giggle, she said, given Keir Starmer's definition of a woman, we can't rule him out from wanting to be the Labour's first female Prime Minister, which made me giggle, actually. I mean, it's really, gloves are off, I think. And I think she does have a point because, like I said, there's so much beige in politics. I mean, who do you vote for? There's nothing between the parties.
But can she, I mean, she talks a good game. Can she do anything about it? That's the thing. It's OK saying, we've got to crack down at immigration. How are you going to do that?
Yeah, time management. I mean, I guess I don't know what her plan is, but like Margaret Thatcher said something about being in the middle of the road, you're going to get hit by both traffic, oncoming. And so I think something has to change within the party system because I feel politically homeless. I don't trust anybody. And it's not a nice position to be in,
Well, that results in apathy, doesn't it? And that's probably the worst thing that you can end up with, an apathetic nation.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people who are maybe at the stage now where they've had enough of the Conservatives, but they're not completely sold on the alternative either. And I think a lot in the local election, a lot of Conservative voters stayed at home, for instance. So a lot will depend on, come the next general election, getting the vote out and convincing people to vote positively for your party rather than against something else.
Kevin, Vladimir Zelensky trots around Europe trying to get support for, to shore up this war and this oppression with Russia. Britain are saying, you want to join NATO, we will be there, we will back your membership for Ukraine, which is right and proper, probably, but very inflammatory.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, it can't really get any worse, can it? I mean, they've invaded anyway, so what else are they going to do?
No one in Europe has gone as far as to say that yet, have they? And you do wonder, you say it can't get any worse. He's got a nuclear armoury, so it could get worse.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's a really good line. I haven't seen it in any of the other papers. I think it's an exclusive that Rishi Sunak has given a verbal assurance to Volodymyr Zelensky behind the scenes yesterday. They won't come out and say it publicly, as you say, that post the war, Ukraine will join NATO, or certainly UK will support the Ukraine's joining of NATO, but that's after the war. Because at the moment, because of Article 5 of the NATO Accords, an attack on one is an attack on all. So effectively, if Ukraine was in NATO now, we'd be in a World War III. So that's why, at the moment, NATO countries are pretty reticent. But, as I say, after the war, and at the moment, there's no immediate prospect of the war ending.
Although I always wonder, would we actually be at war even if they'd been in NATO? Because there was another pact, I can't remember what it was called, that had been signed in Poland, where they agreed to give up all of their nuclear weapons, but if they were invaded, we would run to their support, and then we didn't.
Well, I
think that every effort will always be made to avoid World War III, even if there are conventions and
Russia isn't daft. If Ukraine had been in NATO prior to the invasion, it would have made the invasion much less likely because they don't want to be involved in a nuclear war either. So, but now that we're in the war, we can't really have Ukraine in NATO until the war is over. And as I say, that's probably some way off yet, unfortunately.
A number of the papers, Davinia, are covering a police disciplinary hearing yesterday, and it doesn't make good reading at all.
No.
This is a policewoman who was Wayne Couzens, who murdered Sarah Everard. He flashed at a McDonald's drive-through. It's actually, when you actually sit and think about this, he actually drove through to pay for a burger, whatever it is, and I think he did this 3 times or so.
And what it is, there's this woman here. It sounds like a horrible woman. I mean, I know the Met have problems with misogyny and stuff, but I mean, it's like, who are we letting in to our police force? This woman, Samantha Lee, has failed to make correct investigative inquiries after he exposed himself at McDonald's, which is bad enough anyway. And you just think, OK, admin error.
She didn't take it seriously.
She didn't take it seriously. But the follow-on that makes me feel really icky about it is she's since quit the Met and has set up a raunchy website called Officer Naughty. I mean...
she wears her uniform. I don't know if you can see any of this, but basically you see her here where she's in various states of undress in her OnlyFans website page here. But it is just a really horrible, bad look, the whole thing.
Again, it's just the Met getting in trouble again for not being able to do their due diligence on clearly risky people. And it's not fair, really. You know, we pay for these people to protect us, and the trust is just dwindling completely. I mean, you can't even trust a female officer now, and it's just ridiculous.
Yes.
I don't know what the entry points are, but these people aren't...
Keep me posted as to what happens with that disciplinary hearing. There's a couple of stories I want to romp through now. The TV stories. Kevin, this is in The Sun. Top Gear, the Top Gear programme, it may be the end.
Yeah, it looks like it. The Sun are reporting that the track where Top Gear is filmed has been dug up. So obviously there's not going to be any filming taking place anytime soon. Obviously the current series was canned midway through because of the crash involving Freddie Flintoff. Sounds like 124 miles per hour. Sounds like a horrific
Have we ever got a full bill of health on him since?
No, but
I mean, we've seen him once, I think.
Quiet,
and
yeah.
Very,
yeah.
And we know, obviously, was it Philip Hammond after his crash? We didn't. Richard Philip Hammond is
MP.
Yeah, sorry about that. Oh, God.
I think that happens a lot.
Rod. Richard Hammond, we didn't really understand how bad it was for some... I mean, obviously, he was very, very ill, but when he talked about it, we got a proper picture.
Yeah, there's been nothing at all
from
Freddie Flintoff, but I think we can surmise that it was a pretty nasty accident. So the filming was stopped, and it looks as though it may well be the end. Obviously, Top Gear, an iconic programme, very popular around the world. We were talking earlier, maybe not as popular as it was under the original guys with Jeremy Clarkson, etc. But yeah, I mean, if it were to be the end, then it would.
So the end of Top Gear, maybe the beginning of Fawlty Towers, the reboot there. This is reported in The Sun. What's the plot?
Well, I mean, do you know, I didn't know there was only 12 episodes ever aired in the 70s. I mean, it's still, like, transcended time. Although I think John Cleese and his daughter, Camilla, have written a new series about Fawlty Towers, and his wife, Sybil, has been killed off. But some of the descriptions that Basil Fawlty used to call her are quite dated. Saber-toothed tart and a toxic midget. I mean, I think they're going to have to re-edit that, aren't they, somewhat? But I'll look forward to that because, you know, Cleese is... I've always got a soft spot because of the Monty Python scenes, you know. I mean, I love those guys.
Well, you can also get your John Cleese fix here on GB News, his new show soon to launch. So fantastic. Tuned our way to that.
Well, Fawlty Towers is genius and wonderful, wonderful stuff. So basically, Sybil will be killed off. And it will introduce a secret daughter, Basil's secret daughter, Basil, who was the result of an affair. We look forward to it whenever it happens. We look forward to you two again in 40 minutes' time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, today marks 80 years since the 617 Squadron embarked on their mission to destroy German dams in the Ruhr Valley. Almost half their planes were shot down and 53 men were killed.
Tonight, a Lancaster bomber, the plane used in the attack, will fly over London and air bases in Lincolnshire in memory of those who took part. Our reporter Will Hollis has gone back in time to remember those historic raids.
Few Second World War stories hold the power of the Dambusters raid. The bravery of the men, the brilliance of the bouncing bomb, the absolute best of Britain and its allies. In May 1943, the men of 617 Squadron flew Lancaster bombers from RAF Scampton in Lincolnshire on a mission to destroy dams at the heart of Germany. Causing catastrophic damage to the Nazi war machine, Operation Chastise catapulted 617 to international fame, particularly Wing Commander Guy Gibson, who was just 24.
Wing Commander Guy Gibson, on whom the Queen bestowed the Victoria Cross.
He famously said the squadron will either make history or be completely wiped out. Immortalised in the 1950s film, 617's exploits are a tale that Brits never tire of telling. But the men in the story are all gone. The last surviving raider, Johnny Johnson, died in December. Here he is speaking in 2018.
Always the uppermost thing in my mind was the Dams raid. That had to be the outstanding part of the whole of my career.
Inventor Barnes Wallis, who created the bouncing bomb, is celebrated as one of the war's greatest minds. A prototype is displayed at the Petwood Hotel in Woodhall Spa. It became 617's home after the Dams raid.
This is a beautiful picture of a snowball fight between 617 and 627 squadrons.
Edward Mear is the hotel's historian.
Coming as they did from ordinary, sometimes terraced homes in industrial cities. And to come here, it was already like a palace to them. And they really did feel as though they'd, and I quote them, died and gone to heaven. But of course, the following evening, that's probably what a lot of them did.
53 men died in the raid. They're remembered at the 617 memorials in Woodhall High Street. Chris is part of the Squadron Association. His dad, John, joined 617 after the raid, flying missions on D-Day and Fortress Europe.
He tended to keep very quiet with the family, but he was involved in squadron reunions.
Chris says his dad spoke highly of the Dambuster men.
He was in awe of them. They were doing something which had never been done before in creating that sort of attack.
To mark the 80th anniversary, the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight will fly a Lancaster above wartime bases, including the historic Dambusters' home, Scampton. Recently, a government plan to house up to 2,000 asylum seekers at the old base has been met with backlash from locals and politicians. Back at the memorial, Chris says we must never forget what the men of 617 did in the raids.
I think it's important that we remember this anniversary and anniversaries to come because of the bravery of these men.
617 still flies in the Air Force. The pilots inside the cockpits are different, but the courage inspired by the Dambusters is still there.
They are sure to be remembered in all histories of the war. They did a magnificent job.
Will Hollis, GB News in Lincolnshire.
80 years ago today. Your tributes, very welcome. Get in touch.
Stay with us. We're going to have more for you on Rishi Sunak's message on immigration to European leaders, and we'll also bring you the latest unemployment figures. First, though,
Greg Dewhurst as your Tuesday morning weather forecast.
Good morning, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's going to be a dry day ahead with high pressure in charge. We could see a few showers largely across the north and the east of the UK. And feeling quite warm in the sunshine. High pressure dominating as we move through this week, though it does move away at times and allows weak weather fronts to topple over, giving some patchy rain largely across the far north of the UK. Many of us fine and dry, and temperatures rising as the week goes on too. After a chilly start this morning, we've got plenty of sunshine to come. However, as we move towards the afternoon, the cloud will bubble up, so a bit more in the way of grey skies for the afternoon, but there should still be some sunny spells. The risk of a few showers, largely across parts of Scotland, perhaps Northern Ireland, and then later across eastern parts of England. One or two of these could be heavy at times, but most places staying dry, and in the sunshine, temperatures reaching the mid to high teens, 18, 19 degrees as a maximum temperature. Into the evening time, we could still see a few showers across southern Scotland, northeast England, just moving their way southwards, but they tend to fizzle out, and then skies generally clear for most of us. Perhaps one or two mist and fog patches where skies fall light, and again quite a chilly night to come under the clearest skies, falling to mid to low single figures in the countryside, towns and cities holding up. Perhaps just thicker cloud moving into the far north to start Wednesday morning as this next weather system starts to move in from the Atlantic. But for many, another fine day with that high pressure in charge, plenty of sunny spells. Just notice though, into the afternoon, perhaps some eastern areas just catching the odd sharp shower, but again most places will avoid these, and that rain just making steady progress eastwards across central and northern Scotland. So quite chilly here, but again in the sunshine not feeling too bad, the high teens. Over the next few days it stays largely dry, some rain at times perhaps for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and those temperatures gradually rising and less chilly at night time too, temperatures into the low 20s by the end of the week.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Unite to protect our borders. The Prime Minister will urge European leaders as his Home Secretary is accused of undermining his authority.
Hello, very nice to see you. 7 o'clock is the time. Very nice to have you on board. It's the 16th of May. You're having breakfast here on GB News, on radio, online, on TV with Eamonn and Isabel.
Here's what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak will claim today that the most vulnerable are paying the price for a broken international asylum system as he urges European leaders in Iceland to crack down on illegal migration.
He will also hold talks with the head of the European Court of Human Rights in a push to reform rules that allowed judges to block deportation flights to Rwanda. It follows a speech from the Home Secretary on migration, seen as a challenge to the PM's leadership.
The head of the Royal College of Nursing will today urge the government to get the job finished and to negotiate a pay deal. Her comments come 7 days ahead of new strike ballots, which could see nurses walking out until Christmas.
Prince Andrew has demanded a face-to-face summit with the King. It's been reported in the ongoing row over plans to evict him from Royal Lodge. The Duke of York is said to be fearful that the royal family might switch off his gas and electricity to force him out.
And believe it or not, they've extended the deadline so you can still get your votes in for the Trick Awards.
Up for Best Multi-Channel News Programme. I have... Well, stop. You're not going to say that I'm nominated for Best Presenter again. Surely not. Don't embarrass me. Unbelievably is right there. Yeah.
If you would like to vote, and we would very much like you to do so, you can scan the QR code on your screen there and have your say.
Could I have my say about something? I
don't know.
Have you ever seen the length of an anteater's tongue?
Oh my gosh.
Have you? Do you know why? Because yesterday I was watching this nature programme. Ben Fogle was presenting.
I love Ben Fogle.
It was about a zoo, right? And Kate Humble.
I love Kate Humble.
And they had this anteater which was pregnant, and it had a nose that was as long as its body. But then, out of the nose came a tongue that
to match
was
the length of the
3
novel.
times of the length of the body.
Crikey.
So it was, and it, know what it licked?
What did it lick?
Golden syrup.
Stop it.
It did. I'm not, honestly, I'm not joking you.
Really?
Yes, and they had this tube and the golden syrup was there, and it was able to go.
I would suggest that's not a healthy breakfast.
Would you not?
No. Lots of emails
the
coming
anteater
in.
liked it.
Do keep them coming in. This one from someone who describes themselves as Duchess Sunshine, aka Lindsay. I became a GB News viewer on the lead up to the coronation, which we like to hear. I am now a huge fan of your show and the presenters. Eamonn let loose is the best thing I've ever seen.
Stop.
And Sandy Butler has said, morning team, how lovely to have Eamonn and Isabel to lighten the load in between the doom and gloom. They go with sunshine and lift everyone's spirits in times when people are not sure if they're saying the right thing or the wrong thing. Carry on.
But at least
regardless.
we're not a farrago of fakery. Remember that, which you'll get at ITV at 10 o'clock this morning. Served up every day, well, except Fridays. Monday to Thursday, a farrago of fakery, and they get away with it.
Keep your views coming in. GB News.
It's just my view, for what it's worth.
Yeah.
That's just my view.
Yeah, they love it.
It's that long. I swear, syrup, golden syrup, licked off its body. All right, it was horrendous. So this top story that we have for you this morning, the Prime Minister is going to Iceland today, to Reykjavik, right? And he is going to urge European leaders to get together and say, let's do something about this border situation, adding that the current system, the international migration system, is totally broken, not just for us, but for everybody in Europe.
So it's a Council of Europe meeting, and it's taking place in Reykjavik, but he's also going to be meeting with the head of the European Court of Human Rights, where he'll push for changes to the rule that allows judges to block deportation flights. They're known as pyjama injunctions, because sometimes duty lawyers late at night, anonymous without a name, could put paid to the government's plans with the Rwanda flights.
So they turn up in their pyjamas?
Pyjama injunctions.
OK. Now, as Focus on Border Control follows a speech yesterday, which we're all reporting on today, Suella Braverman, the Home Secretary, and it's seen by the Conservative Party as a challenge to the Prime Minister's position on migration, and indeed, as we go to our political analyst Leon Emirali, not just his position, Leon, on migration, I would say, but his position as Prime Minister, full stop.
Absolutely. I mean, anyone watching that speech yesterday, it would be hard to see what her hidden intention was. She clearly was making a pitch to be this version to the right of Rishi Sunak, who will be tough on migration, who will be more perhaps traditionally conservative, which a lot of people, rightly or wrongly, seem to have this perception that Rishi Sunak is not. And I think she was making a clear pitch for number 10. And it's just bizarre that she's doing that whilst in the capacity as one of the most senior cabinet ministers in the country as Home Secretary.
Meanwhile, what the Prime Minister will be trying to do today, I suppose, will be doubling down on his credentials when it comes to immigration, because, as you point out, actually, they're pretty much on the same page, apart from he hasn't been able to get the results yet.
Yeah, exactly.
And he'll be trying hard today to convince not only the Council of Europe, but the European Court of Human Rights to go with his plans.
Yes, so Rishi Sunak is going to Reykjavik to be able to make his case to European leaders that says, look, tackling this illegal migration is not just the problem of Britain, it's the problem of all of us in Europe.
How will that go down? Because don't we take probably the fewest migrants across Europe?
There are a number of countries that take more migrants than the UK does, not least certainly those in the east of Europe, where obviously there's a lot now of displacement because of the war in Ukraine and elsewhere. So, yes, I do think that a lot of Europe are going to look at that and say, well, hang on a minute, we aren't going to help you because this is clearly a domestic issue that he's facing because voters want to see immigration reduced. But the big question here is we're talking about illegal migration. Suella Braverman is now wanting to talk about legal migration and cutting that as well. And that worries me to a degree because we need migration in sense of the economic revival of this country that's clearly required. She's talking about maybe cutting international students coming to the UK. Well, education is one of the UK's biggest exports, and I think that's important for our economy. So there is a fine line between tackling illegal migration, but also legal migration, those that want to come to this country by legal routes.
Just to interrupt you there, we're just hearing that these unemployment figures that have just been released, slightly down in this quarterly on 0.2% the first quarter of this year.
Good news, I guess. It's a drop in unemployment, albeit a small drop of 0.2%. So I think, Rishi Sunak can point to perhaps there is the economy improving, that he will want to tackle inflation on top of that he'll want to see the UK becoming a more productive economy. And clearly unemployment falling is part of that. But there needs to be a lot more than just a small drop of 0.2 for the public to start to realise that. And ultimately, it's our pockets where we feel the economy economy the most, and things are still very, very expensive.
OK, Liam, we're going to bring in the economist Vicky Price to talk some more about this breaking news this morning. Chief Economic Advisor for the CEBR. Good morning to you, Vicky. I don't know if you've had a chance to see these latest ONS employment statistics. Give us your take on them, if you will.
Yes, I think what has happened is that employment in the 3 months to March increased by 0.2%, but the unemployment rate overall was slightly higher than had been the case before, so it's gone up to 3.9%. So we mustn't confuse the two. And of course, there are all sorts of reasons for that sort of disparity, if you like, but the underlying trend is still one where we have quite good employment data overall, but obviously because of the slowdown in the economy that we have seen, there is also an increase in unemployment generally, but tiny increase. And one of the reasons for that increase in unemployment is because more people are now presenting themselves to work. So because of course, if there is a lot of inactivity, which had been very high, over 20% for quite some time, then you're looking at a smaller labour force from which you can sort of calculate your unemployment data. What's happened now is that there's been this increase of people returning to work, particularly the younger generation, so 18 to 24-year-olds, which is good news. You still have a problem with the long-term sick who are increasing their inactivity levels, but overall what you're seeing is there's a bit of a return to work, more people making themselves available, and therefore, inevitably the unemployment rate goes up a little bit while the economy adjusts. So it's good news overall, I would say, that we are still in a position where we can claim to have high employment and low unemployment, despite the slight increase in that unemployment rate.
Vicky, how do we... I'm fascinated to get your take as an economist on what the Home Secretary is saying and how she's pitching herself against the Prime Minister on immigration, because we hear that the Home Office is predicting a further sharp rise in immigration by the time we hit the next election. They're saying net migration, an influx of another 1.1 million foreign workers and students projected for next year. How does that whole immigration thing play out with us trying to bring down unemployment in this country? Do you see it as a conflict, as a danger, or you think it's livable with?
What you really want is to have higher growth, but that, of course, encourages companies to want to hire people, which is basically, how you develop this marketplace to be sort of healthy and vibrant. What we've got, unfortunately, at present is still over 1 million vacancies, which are not being filled. And there are many sectors, such as hospitality, for example, construction, which are clearly suffering from the fact that we've lost quite a lot of EU workers in particular. Yes, there are loads more people coming in, as we've seen recently, but those people are not necessarily the right ones for particular types of jobs where some of those serious shortages are. But nevertheless, having more people available for work makes a huge amount of sense for the sectors that are still struggling with staff shortages. But I mean, you've got a point. If you still have, problems with unemployment, then, lots more people turning up may not be particularly helpful. But frankly, we've had very high inward migration for quite some time, and yet we have practically record low unemployment levels. So I wouldn't worry about that from that point of view. But what it would do is stimulate the economy to grow faster, which is the general calculation that organizations like the Office for Budget Responsibility make. They were worried that because of lower projections of migration, inward migration, we were going to have quite low growth and low productivity in the coming years. Well, if we have more, maybe they will have to revise their statistics.
And I suppose just because people are in employment doesn't necessarily mean that you will have growth. But I'm thinking about, the government policy on tax. The front of the Times today, a fifth of all taxpayers will now be in the 40p band. And that fiscal drag pulling in nurses and teachers who we know aren't particularly well paid. And it can't possibly be right that these people are being dragged into the top tax rate.
Well, you're quite right. I think when we're looking at just unemployment in isolation and the sort of low unemployment rate, we have to bear in mind that quite a lot of the jobs that people are doing are not particularly well paid. And although there has been an increase in various areas, they have not been high pay, high productivity jobs at all. And yes, it's absolutely true that because of the fiscal drag, basically what's going on is that, and what is covered in that article that you just pointed out, is that we've had a freezing of personal allowances. And although obviously wages are going up in nominal terms. So we just had the latest data, which suggests that overall wages are going up by just under 7% for the economy as a whole. That's in nominal terms. And what this means, of course, is that in relation to everyone who pays tax, if you get that pay rise, you quite quickly get into paying tax for the first time. The basic rate of income tax is 20%. And there are millions of people who are also now having to pay the higher rate of income tax when they earn over £50,000 or thereabouts. And quite a lot are being dragged into both of those tax brackets by just getting higher pay, which is not an increase in real terms. It still leaves them poorer. And the result, of course, is that in terms of being able to spend and keep their living standards as they were or even improve them, many of them have great difficulty in doing so. And you were quite right to point to the public sector in particular, where nurses and others are striking right now for precisely that reason.
Vicky Price, we appreciate your analysis of that breaking news this morning. Thank you very much indeed. A reminder at home, if you are just tuning in, those figures just out this morning from the Office for National Statistics, that unemployment has risen to 3.9% in the 3 months to March, up from 3.8% in the previous 3 months.
And if you're one of those people who is unemployed, let us know how it is affecting you. What is your area of expertise or not, as the case may be, and just what can be done to get you back in work. What would you be looking for? 14 minutes past 7 o'clock.
Now, this week, a national campaign on knife crime awareness aims to highlight the risks, consequences and ultimately the preventability of knife misuse.
Well, let's go to our reporter Sophie Reaper, who's been speaking to those trying to encourage young people to give up their weapons. And we talk about knives. You're going to see some whoppers here.
They've been stabbed and they've been killed. So now one of your friends is dead.
9 years ago, Byron Heighton's brother, John Joe, was brutally stabbed to death. As a result, Byron launched the JJ Effect, dedicating his life to educating people about knives and the horrific impact they can have.
This one was taken off a 13-year-old, extremely sharp.
I've got stories of kids buying and selling knives, 3 foot, 2 foot long for as little as a £5. But then when you leave the classroom, they're all in tears, they're crying, they're coming in mass amounts, wanting photos, and oh my God, and then we get suicide emails and we get parents emailing me saying, oh my God, my child won't stop talking about that presentation, what you've done is amazing. And that was a desired effect.
Byron now works with knives every single day, helping young people to understand the danger in his own unique way.
What I say to people is don't be that person that's going to be bleeding out, screaming, please ring my mum, please ring my dad, I'm sorry, begging for forgiveness, when all that consequence of your actions that you've got yourself into have now led you to this point. Sadly, you might be dying.
They kill someone, can he go to prison? Yeah.
This week is National Knife Crime Awareness Week, and the key word here is awareness. Knife attacks can happen at any time, in any place, in a school, in a workplace, in the community. But with better education, there's a higher chance of prevention. As part of this, twice a year, each of the 43 police forces in England and Wales partake in Operation Sceptre, a national campaign focused on tackling knife crime. In Lancashire, despite figures recently decreasing, they say their work to combat this issue will never stop.
In Lancashire, we do knife crime work every week of the year. We don't just do it specifically for Operation Sceptre. But what we do is bring all of those tactics together in one intense week, twice a year.
In 2022, England and Wales saw 49,265 offences involving a knife or sharp object. It's hoped now that this campaign will encourage people to put down their knives.
If you carry a weapon, you are more likely to be involved in violence and therefore more likely to have that weapon used on yourself. And the impact of that, not just on yourself, but your families and other members of the communities, is catastrophic. So please do not do it. Seek help, speak to people around why you're carrying the weapon in the first place, and we can get you that support.
How else can this knife get you in trouble then?
For Byron, nothing can bring back his brother. But now he works to educate and prevent similar tragedies from tearing other families apart. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
So, Knife Crime Awareness Week this is, and one of the news stories related to this is an 11-year-old boy at a holiday park in Ayr in Scotland, and he was tasered because he was brandishing a knife. And I do have to say, we asked you, what do you think of this? And there was a lot of, well, these poor little thing's only 11, and, you know, what precautions should be taken with that? Well, I can't see anybody having any sympathy.
Phil says, surely a trained police officer, presumably wearing a stab vest, knows how to disarm someone with the knife. Having said that, I understand this child could have killed someone with the weapon, which makes that decision for them very difficult.
So that's as close as you get.
That's about as nuanced as anyone's going. Everyone else is, of course, the 11-year-old should have been tasered. Yes, I think the 11-year-old should be tasered. An 11-year-old using a knife is no different to an adult. Lots of people saying just taser the little so-and-so.
Yeah, yeah. Ultimately, a knife's a deadly weapon. The real question to be asked is why he has lacked parenting at home.
I agree, and that's when I feel sad. Obviously, they're damaged, and I have no sympathy, but they are still a child.
If he is old enough to wave a knife about, says Lee, he's old enough to get tasered.
Well, yeah, exactly, and go to prison if need be. Keep the views coming in. We love to hear from you throughout the course of the morning. Had another lovely one in this morning saying you guys are just so funny. Keep them coming in.
Why do people realise we don't mean to be funny? We're not here to be funny. We're not here as your playthings. To make people... If Isabel acts unprofessionally and laughs at serious comments that I make, that's not my fault, is it?
I deserve a medal, is what I deserve.
Well, why do you find an anteater's tongue funny?
I don't. It's a nervous laugh. Because I'm just so nervous about what you're going to say next.
Well, you should watch it. It's a programme called Longleat.
I do like Kate Humble, and I do like... Who's the other person?
Fogel.
Ben Fogel, two of my absolute faves. Absolute faves.
But you can get an anteater to eat anything if you slather it in golden syrup. For instance, it loves it.
OK.
It does.
OK, noted. 7:20, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories.
The government's pledging to put more British produce on supermarket shelves and plates, and about time, we would have thought. The proposal includes a bid to ensure farmers can get a fair price for their produce. Why does everybody pretend they care about farmers when it all goes too far? With the Prime Minister saying that supporting food producers is essential for economic growth. Well, really, Sherlock.
The Royal College of Nursing leader will give a speech today urging the Prime Minister to enter negotiations to end strikes. Pat Cullen will say the NHS and social care system are sailing dangerously close to the wind.
Up to 1 in 7 bus services across England could be cut if the government funding is not extended. The deal to keep these services running stops at the end of June. Operators planning to cancel or change routes are required to give 6 weeks' notice, with pressure for a new agreement to be secured by this Friday.
Coming up, we're going to ask if social media filters that act as digital makeup are damaging a whole generation of young people's self-esteem, or is it actually just making us all into crazy narcissists obsessed with how we look? That's next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back at 7:25. Still to come on today's programme.
Just after 7:30, reaction on the just released unemployment figures down 0.2%, so that's good news, could be better, I suppose. We've got Jonathan Ashworth, the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, with his reaction coming up.
And we'll go to Britain's most honest petrol station that's putting cash-strapped drivers first by slashing 25p off the price of diesel. We'll find out how they're doing it at 8:45.
How are they doing it,
Well,
Isabel?
because all of the prices of fuel has gone down. It's why everybody else isn't doing it, I suppose, is the question.
So everybody
Who's
else...
honest and decent. Yeah, they are profiteering.
Profiteering? Always got to say something there. Anyway, you can join in any of these discussions. Principled Petrol. Let us know what you think about all of that. GBVs at gbnews.uk, or you can tweet at GBNews.
After you.
As the online safety bill continues to make its way through Parliament, campaigners are calling for the regulation of social media filters. Now, Isabel and I would like to point out today, people often say, Eamonn, how for a man of your age do you look so well? People often say to me, do you know, yesterday there was some grab or something they were using on social media here, and the amount of people were saying, Eamonn's gone too far with the fillers.
Really?
Oh, yes. But then I looked at it, I thought they had a point. I do look as if I'm all sort of puffy.
Well, people pay a lot of money for that look. So
I got big hamster cheeks and sort of slitty eyes.
Well, people have been subscribing to the Facetune app as well.
Smile. You rarely smile. Your just chin gets more prominent. My eyes get small.
Stop it. All of these problems can be eradicated with the use of the Facetune app, and
Listen,
it
my
allows
point being,
to make
we
small
should have
changes to
a
their
camera
photographic appearance.
here on the studio floor that makes us look good.
Oh, do I not look all right as I am? I think I'm okay as I am.
You're appropriate for a woman your age. You know what I mean? I think your
I think that's
your
what's
age
called a
appropriate.
backhanded compliment. Anyway, social media campaigner Suzanne Samaka thinks the use of filters should be regulated. Meanwhile, the founder of Lottie Lee Fine Jewellery, Charlotte Lee, doesn't see much difference between the use of filters and wearing makeup. So
And
we are debating
why is that?
the pros
Why
and
is that,
cons.
Charlotte? Why do you not see the difference between electronically and what you'd have to do with makeup?
Well, as a fine jewellery designer and being in the luxury market and also being a parent, I think that filters are very important because it makes me look like I'm not exhausted, it gives me a confidence boost, and it's also a way of me being able to promote my brand in a way that I need to.
Well, Suzanne, you're sceptical about the use of filters.
I am.
And just tell me why you think they're different from, say, a woman wearing lots of makeup, effectively a sort of mask to give a bit of confidence.
I think the answer is the fact that filters and digital editing have set a completely new beauty standard. And then when we don't meet that standard, it affects our mental health. And a lot of the time that standard is completely unobtainable. So actually we're completely setting ourselves up to fail.
But what, Suzanne, if you use it and then you're caught out using it? Now, I can understand you use it and you make a post or whatever it is. I mean, for instance, in Charlotte's jewellery end, you know, that's it. She's advertising the jewellery more so than the person. So it doesn't really matter what the person looks like. You're going to look at the jewellery. But say you were on a dating app or something, Suzanne, and, you know, you have yourself made out to look a certain way and you know you don't look that way, and someone's going to turn up and get it all in its full glory or unglory in real life.
Yeah, I think the problem I have with digital editing and filters is the lack of honesty. For me, it fits in that bucket of plastic surgery. It's entitled to, people can do whatever they like, but I think the transparency and some form of honesty around that is important.
And what do you think then, Suzanne, of the criticism that people say, you know, actually it just makes everybody a bit fake and a bit obsessed with perfection, and actually we're more than the sum of our parts, and people have forgotten that beauty comes from within, doesn't it?
Yes, but you've got to attract somebody in the first place. The sum of your parts might attract them in the first place.
Well, no, but it should, is my point. Whether you're funny or kind or clever, all of those are attractive qualities, and yet we seem to only really care about whether or not they're wrinkle-free and thin and all the rest of it.
As I said, I think that it is really about self-esteem and being able to boost your confidence when you're going online to talk to your followers. And I also can't see the difference between a filter and wearing makeup, or, you know, having specialist lighting, knowing your angles.
Never thought of it like that before as well. Suzanne, do you think Charlotte's a fake by doing that?
Do I think what? Sorry?
That she's a fake?
A fake? I don't, because when she uses filters, it actually states. So the campaign that I founded is asking for labelling of use of filters. So you can use them whenever you want, but I think what's important is that people looking at that content and consuming that content understand that it's not quite reality.
Charlotte, you said that you're a parent, a busy parent, and people can always understand if you're trying to create content, you're in a rush, you've got 1,000 things to do, this helps with doing that. But do you worry about your children getting access to social media, growing up in a world where everything is picture perfect?
I do worry about it, but this is the reality of what they're growing up with, and I think at the end of the day we have to have open conversations about it. We need to educate our children. When I was younger, pictures were being photoshopped and there was no conversation about it. Nowadays we're talking about it more. My daughter went on social media the other day. She saw her cousin. She said how gorgeous she looked, and I said, she does look gorgeous. She is gorgeous, but can you see that she's actually got a filter on? So I think it's just
how can you tell if somebody's got a filter on?
Because you can see it's a very enhanced image, and it sort of looks perfect.
I agree with you with the conversation that has now been had, because, you know, if you go back 15 years or so ago, you assumed that is it, that is the way that person looks, and you will never achieve that sort of look. whereas now at least you know there's a bit of a con going on.
Yeah, and I also look at the things that makeup artists can do today. I mean, we see that on social media a lot, where you see somebody without makeup and you see them with makeup, and they look like an entirely different person. And I think that there should be honesty about it. They should be labelled. If someone's used a filter, I think there should be a label on it.
Well, heck, it's better than surgery, isn't it, Suzanne?
Certainly cheaper.
Yeah. All right, well, listen, we'll leave it there. Suzanne Samaka, Charlotte Lee, thank you for both putting your case in the debate about beauty filters. Let us know at home whether or not you think they're good.
We now go to Jonathan Ashworth, MP, the Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary. You can judge for yourself whether he's having a beauty filter put on this morning or not. He's gorgeous looking, isn't he? He is.
They're all filter-free.
It's the sunlight. He's bathed in glorious...
It is flashing light, I'll give you that.
Sunlight there, very good. Not bad for a man at 72.
What have I...
Looks well. Looks very well. Jonathan, got to ask you about these unemployment figures from 7 o'clock this morning. Down in the right direction, maybe not down far enough as far as you're concerned.
Well, overall employment is still lower under the Conservatives today than it was pre-pandemic. And those out of work for reasons of long-term sickness, again at a record level, and there are less vacancies in the economy. So they're not a great set of statistics. And I would argue that we need action now to help people who are trapped on benefits to move into work. It's why we've offered an into-work guarantee reform to a particular aspect of the benefit system. But we've also got to offer people proper training and help and reskilling to move into good, well-paid jobs, because a job should be able to provide for yourself, for your family, for you to build a home life. And too many jobs in the country are low paid at the moment.
I mean, what do you make? I mean, the government has gone out of its way to try and get people back into work, haven't they? They're doing in-work benefits. They're offering groundbreaking child support from 9 months old, midlife MOTs to try and get those older people who've not gone back into work after the pandemic. You can't pretend that they haven't been making an effort to tackle this.
Well, all those policies you announced are ones that I was proposing before the government adopted them, but they could go further. So there's a particular reform to the way in which benefits work, where the government could adopt an into-work guarantee. That means that if you're currently out of work for reasons of sickness, you should be given an opportunity to move into work, and if it doesn't work out for you because of your sickness, you can return to the sickness benefits you were on. That is something we've proposed, but the government haven't adopted. But we've also got to do more to really invest in training and reskilling people so they can take advantage of the opportunities that are coming. We know there's going to be lots of new jobs in, whether that is in the green transition or perhaps new jobs in technology and digital. We know that AI is completely transforming or will transform the world of work. And we need to be preparing for that future by investing in skills and training now.
Jonathan, will the net migration figures affect that way of work as well? We've got the Home Office, they're talking about maybe by next year they'll be reaching a net migration figure of 1.1 million. And we've got this row at the moment between the Home Secretary and her placing an attack on the Prime Minister about policy towards migration in this country. Do you think migration has an effect? Is it something we should be worried about or not?
Well, I mean, it is an extraordinary spectacle that you've got the Conservative Home Secretary criticising the policies of the Conservative Home Secretary. Look, migration is always part of our mix in the labour market. It always has been. There's a particular increase at the moment because of what's been happening in Ukraine and Hong Kong. But what we really should be doing is investing in skills and training so that all those young people who are out of work today are given an opportunity to move into good, well-paying jobs. I think that Tory politicians just telling people, oh, you can all go and pick fruit when people are struggling to put food on the table and pay the bills, that is such an unambitious statement for this country. I'm ambitious for people in this country. I want to invest in them, and I want everybody to make the most and to go as far as their talents can take them.
Well, you could argue that mixed messages coming out of Cabinet aren't just a problem for the government, but for the shadow Cabinet as well. Yesterday, we asked your colleague about these plans to extend voter rights to settled EU migrants and to 16-year-olds. He played it down. We're just considering it's not necessarily going into the manifesto. Later on, during an interview, Sir Keir Starmer doubled down on that and said absolutely didn't have a problem with it. Well, this morning at the front of the Mail, Michael Gove has written to Sir Keir Starmer asking for clarification on exactly why he would want to downgrade the ultimate privilege of British citizenship. And he also says on adulthood... British citizenship.
OK.
And he also says on adulthood, does Sir Keir Starmer no longer think it begins at 18? Is this another U-turn?
Well, I mean, that is only a proposal that is being looked at. Of course, EU nationals vote already for their local council. I don't know if Michael Gove is proposing to take away that right. He perhaps should tell us. I've not seen his letter. I don't know if he offers that
clarification. That's a reciprocated deal.
Today.
If you're living as a British citizen, say, in Spain, you're also entitled to vote in local elections. But there's no EU country whereby you get reciprocal rights to vote in a national election when you're an expat.
Well, it's only a proposal that is being looked at, and I think it's a proposal which would apply to people who have lived here for many, 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 many years. And as I say, EU nationals can vote for their local council, and local councils are responsible for significant sums of money, and I don't think Michael Gove is proposing to take that away, as far as I can tell. But
no, but I think a lot of people would say it's a cynical ploy, not only to try and increase your vote share, but possibly to reverse Brexit.
No, absolutely not. The Labour Party is not about reversing Brexit. We want to make Brexit work for this country. We want to deal with the problems in the current Brexit arrangements for example, we don't have a veterinary agreement which impacts on food prices in the agricultural sector, for example, but we want to make Brexit work.
Good. We'll tell that to the Egypt behind you there. He's waving those placards. And thank you for your time and your comments on all those.
Right, OK.
OK. Thanks, Jonathan.
Thank
Jonathan
you very
Ashworth there. He's the Shadow Work and Pension Secretary, live there from Westminster and College Green there.
Stay with us. After the break, we'll be discussing why diet drinks with sweeteners don't actually help you lose weight. We'll be discussing that with Davinia Taylor and Kevin Schofield in just a minute.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know, Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're sitting here raring to go with the papers, with the political editor at HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield, and the actress and well-being guru, Davinia Taylor. We were having a talk about maples. What were we talking about?
Golden syrup.
Golden syrup, which Isabel detests and apparently is banned in her house.
Yeah,
no, it's fine for cake making.
But I think maple syrup's the one you're after because it's got enzymes in it that help you digest it. I think golden syrup is just pure sugar, right? Refined sugar, so really bad for you. But I think maple syrup comes from a tree. It does. And it's got some cofactors in it that make it slower release.
How do you know that?
I think I saw it in a...
You said that with great authority. Oh, it does. It does.
I'm just agreeing.
I believe it.
I'm just agreeing.
Don't start on everyone. Kevin, let's talk about something...
No, but when I was young, they used to have pots of that syrup stuff. It was green tin.
Yes, Lyle, Tate and Lyle.
Yeah, you still have that.
Yeah. Still have the golden syrup with the golden...
But you think that's bad?
No, I have those tins in my house. I wouldn't put it on toast.
You get it and you use it once
put it on toast.
and it sits in your
cupboard. Who are we
signalling
out that has poisoned your children with this on toast? Your granny trying to do her best.
She's watching.
She's trying to do her best.
Right, we're going to talk about nurses, teachers and police
Sharon,
officers are up to being dragged into the 40% tax ban. This is in the Mail, actually the front of the Times as well, Kevin. This is not what the 40p tax ban was designed for.
No, absolutely not. I mean, it was supposed to be for people who were well off. As 5 times as many people by 2027 will be in the 40p tax band as there were in the 1990s, when it was basically seen as for rich people, basically. And you're talking nurses, teachers, electricians, people who are on pretty ordinary salaries are now being dragged into this 40p tax band because the thresholds at which you start paying it have been frozen. Normally they used to go up with inflation so that they kind of kept ahead of what people were earning. But now they've been frozen. So basically if you get a pay rise, so many people are just going to go straight into going from paying 25 to 40.
This is the price we're paying for COVID, isn't it?
Well, that's part of it, but it's been going on for quite some time. And the political danger for Rishi Sunak is that, a lot of his MPs want taxes to come down. Conservatives obviously traditionally want lower taxes. And if this is, way into 2027, according to the Institute for Fiscal Studies, that takes us right through the next election. So there's no prospect, really, of taxes coming down significantly.
Everybody talks about how to penalise us. Nobody can think about wealth generation. Now, I know controversially, fracking. But, if someone came along and said if fracking was acceptable to everybody, there's the answer to your prayers. We need something that is going to generate income for the country. And I can't think of it. No one else can think of it. So can you think of it?
No, I can't off the top of my head. But I mean, you can't just keep taxing people again and again and again because people eventually will get fed up.
Well, it was what Liz Truss became popular for because she really wanted a low-tax, high-growth economy. And I think we can all probably agree that's where we want to be.
Well, except we didn't want a £70 billion bill that went with it. Why do you keep praising Liz Truss for when she's broken the whole country?
I'm not praising Liz Truss. I'm just explaining what her policy was, and I think everybody probably in the Conservative
policy was a disaster.
Because of the way it was implemented and the ground wasn't prepared and all the rest of it. And she shunned certain institutions which had a devastating impact. But I do think the principle, a lot of people would say, is actually the best way to stimulate the economy. Anyway, let's talk about sweeteners. Less controversially.
Yes, let's get back to sweeteners. So, OK, so the WHO has finally admitted that drinks with sweeteners, such as Diet Coke, are not going to help you lose weight. In fact, they increase type 2 diabetes and...
Then why are they allowed to be sold? Bottom line, they're either good for us or bad for us. They're obviously bad
it's
for us.
all marketing, isn't it? And they have so much control. So my mantra is count chemicals, not calories. I have a very high-calorie diet. I have a lot of fat in my diet, yet I don't spike my insulin and I don't wreck my gut with sweeteners because that triggers addictive eating. So I get ahead of the craving. I have a lot of fat in my diet, really good fats. We were just talking about it in the break, weren't we?
Such as what?
So I start my day with MCT oil, which is a medium-chain triglyceride from a coconut, and I whiz it into my coffee, and that hits my liver, shoots up to my brain, and gives me ketone energy. So I have a sustained mental energy, would you believe it, throughout the day, so I don't have to pick at glucose spike and things. These sweeteners, and I know they're addictive because my husband is addicted to Diet Coke. We have cans of it, and I'm like, will you stop it? But it's so addicting, and kids have it thinking it's a healthier option. It is not. It wrecks your gut, and it triggers addictive eating, and you just seek out subconsciously more and more food. So count chemicals, not calories.
Yeah, so basically Coca-Cola or Diet Coke, both a disaster.
They are a disaster. I have kombucha, which is like a fizzy drink, which is fermented green tea, which gives me the energy that you seek from these sort of fizzy drinks. That's a really nice drink. That's what I'm drinking backstage.
Good for your gut, that one.
Yes, it is. It is.
We go to the Daily Telegraph front page there, and we're talking about a warning about misogynistic abuse online, Kevin.
Yes, so the online safety bill is currently going through Parliament. It's been going through for quite some time, and a lot of campaigners saying it doesn't go far enough to crack down on what's described as the Wild West online. As we all know, so much abuse flying around, particularly aimed at women and girls, and a group of lawyers led by Baroness Morgan, used to be the Education Secretary, has tabled an amendment which will basically outlaw misogynistic abuse online, firm up codes of practice to try and crack down on this issue. I mean, speaking as someone who's got 2 daughters, it is a concern. I mean, you can't police and monitor everything that they look at online, and they are very vulnerable to weird guys who like to abuse them.
It's just so difficult how you regulate all of these things, isn't it? And I posted Kate Winslet's acceptance speech from the BAFTAs on my social media yesterday. I had so many direct messages, people saying, how do you decide what's harmful content? And who's going to be sitting in an office somewhere deciding what's misogynistic or not? We don't have enough police officers. We don't have enough control of what's on the internet. It is a bit of a sort of Pandora's box, isn't it?
It is difficult, but I think it's a fight worth having, because, I mean, basically the responsibility ultimately lies with the companies, the online platforms, and what they're proposing is that to protect women, they would ban repeat offenders, and if they didn't do so, the companies would face fines worth up to 10% of their global turnover, so hit them in the pocket, basically, to try and make them sharpen up their act.
You know, you as a dad of 2 daughters, I have a daughter, Isabel's got a daughter as well there. Davin, you any girls?
No, I'm all male.
But you'll have daughter-in-laws.
I can't wait. I need something in common, yes.
But I think the thing is that we might well live in a bubble where we wouldn't even think why anybody would be awful or horrible or look down upon our children who just happen to be girls, because we don't think in that way. But the real shock for people like us is that there is an industry out there that thinks that way. There's businesses that think that way. There are individuals that think that way. And it's a terrible thing to actually then ask somebody to regulate it when people should be regulating themselves on this whole thing.
Well, they should be, but unfortunately, as you know,
awful. We were talking about Sylvester Stallone. Now, Sylvester Stallone, I've watched this series, Davinia, called Tulsa King. I don't know what, so many channels, I don't know what it is. It's probably on Netflix. And it's very good. It's very good.
I've not seen that.
Sylvester Stallone. Very good, very good.
Oh, yes, I have, actually. I've only watched the first episode. Yes, I want to get into it. Yeah, that's my next binge.
So he's in jail in New York, and the gang send him to Tulsa to run the mob's activities in Tulsa, and it's just, I find it quite amusing. It's quite good. Anyway, but that's not... that's his big... I thought that was his television revival, but no, it goes further, according to The Sun.
Well, just leading on from, how do you raise girls, and how do you protect them? So he has 3 beautiful, stunning daughters, and they're in their 20s, and they've done a new series with Paramount Plus. And I do wonder if there's a filter over it like the Kardashians do. But anyway, he's raised them like like lads, really. So they get up at 5:30 in the morning, do military drills, they do chess, reading out loud, and they can fire guns and they smoke cigars.
They do chess?
Yes.
Get military style?
Well, I guess I suppose that's how he was raised, but that,
aggressive chess.
So they're trying to. I mean, it's deemed very male sort of activities. So I'm wondering if that's the sort of answer to the misogyny that's just raise really tough women.
No, let women be women.
I know. I mean, I wouldn't know what to do because I've got 4 boys. If I was to, by the miracle, have another child and it were to be a girl, I would just be like, help? I don't know how I do this,
Well, you're a woman. You just do, what comes naturally. But I don't know. He's certainly... Well, do you know what? If the girls like it and they want to do that with their dad, it's quite a nice bond.
He seems to be very protective. She says that he goes into Rambo mode when any boys come to court.
Yeah, you wouldn't want... Yeah,
no.
He's
to
an
be
alpha,
the boyfriend to go
very much
Sylvester
so,
Stallone answers the door.
Yeah.
Wouldn't fancy
Gulp.
Hilarious.
Meanwhile, Tom Hanks is talking, Kevin, about artificial intelligence and how basically it could take his voice or images of him in previous films, and it means that when he passes away, when he dies or when he retires, his persona could live on in films for years to come.
Yeah, no, he says this is openly being discussed in Hollywood. All the agencies are looking at basically how their clients, when they pass on, what happens to their images and all the information that is stored on them. And basically he says that, such is the march of technology, that he'll be able to star in movies till kingdom come, as he says, forever. He'll be permanently 32 because the images and the data on him as an individual will be there stored.
See, I like the idea of this. I know Isabel's got her reservations for this, but I mean, I've been to see loads of Elvis concerts on stage where he's not there, but there are visuals of him. Where Frank Sinatra's not there, but there's visuals of him. And I look forward to when they do it for Johnny Cash, for instance, or anybody.
But who's
David
controlling
Bowie.
those brands? Who's in charge of which bits that he features in and how they feature, and what they endorse?
In the Elvis
what
case,
the film
it's Priscilla.
content is. Yeah, and that's fine if you've got somebody who's got your best interests at heart and you give them your blessing with that. But you get into grey areas if people have licence to sort of incarnate you forever.
To do anything.
Yeah.
And you're long gone, so there's nothing you can do about it. Yeah.
I think it's
It also means for up-and-coming actors, surely it's going to limit their opportunities, because if Tom Hanks can be starring in a movie 10 years after he's dead, then why
who
would
cares? We should be presenting news forever with me. just there. Davinia and Kevin, thank you both very much. Back in 40 minutes' time.
Stay with us. We're going to have more for you on Rishi Sunak's message on immigration to European leaders, and we'll also bring you more on the unemployment figures. First, though,
Greg Dewhurst with your weather.
Good morning, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's going to be a dry day ahead with high pressure in charge. We could see a few showers largely across the north and the east of the UK. I'm feeling quite warm in the sunshine. High pressure dominating as we move through this week, though it does move away at times and allows weak weather fronts to topple over, giving some patchy rain largely across the far north of the UK. Many of us fine and dry, and temperatures rising as the week goes on too. After a chilly start this morning, we've got plenty of sunshine to come. However, as we move towards the afternoon, the cloud will bubble up, so a bit more in the way of grey skies for the afternoon, but there should still be some sunny spells. The risk of a few showers, largely across parts of Scotland, perhaps Northern Ireland, and then later across eastern parts of England. One or two of these could be heavy at times, but most places staying dry, and in the sunshine, temperatures reaching the mid to high teens, 18, 19 degrees as a maximum temperature. Into the evening time, we could still see a few showers across southern Scotland, northeast England, just moving their way southwards, but they tend to fizzle out, and then skies generally clear for most of us. Perhaps one or two mist and fog patches where skies fall light, and again quite a chilly night to come under the clearest skies, falling to mid to low single figures in the countryside. Towns and cities holding up. Perhaps just thicker cloud moving into the far north to start Wednesday morning as this next weather system starts to move in from the Atlantic. But for many, another fine day with that high pressure in charge. Plenty of sunny spells. Just notice though, into the afternoon, perhaps some eastern areas just catching the odd sharp shower, but again most places will avoid these, and that rain just making steady progress eastwards across central and northern Scotland. So quite chilly here, but again in the sunshine, not feeling too bad, the high teens. Over the next few days it stays largely dry, some rain at times perhaps for Scotland and Northern Ireland, and those temperatures gradually rising and less chilly at night time too, temperatures into the low 20s by the end of the week.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Unite to protect our borders. The Prime Minister will urge European leaders, as his Home Secretary is accused of undermining his authority.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock. It's Tuesday, the 16th of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
Leading the news on this Tuesday morning, Rishi Sunak will claim today that the most vulnerable are paying the price for a broken international asylum system as he urges European leaders in Iceland to crack down on illegal migration.
He'll also hold talks with the head of the European Court of Human Rights in a push to reform rules that allow judges to block deportation flights to Rwanda. It follows a speech from the Home Secretary on migration, which was seen as a challenge to the PM's leadership.
The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has said new figures that show a 0.2% drop in unemployment are encouraging. Speaking in the past hour, he added that the government is sticking to its plan to halve inflation.
The head of the Royal College of Nursing will today urge the government to get the job finished and negotiate a pay deal. Her comments come 7 days ahead of a new strike ballot, which could see nurses walking out until Christmas.
Prince Andrew has reportedly demanded a face-to-face summit with the King in the ongoing row over plans to evict him from Royal Lodge. The Duke of York is said to be fearful the royal family might switch off his water, gas, electricity to get him out.
And if you haven't voted already, there is still time to get your votes in for the Trick Awards.
It'd be very, very nice if we did win the Best News Programme category, for which we are nominated and which you can have your say in that. Best Presenter is also up there, and one of us has been nominated for that. So please scan the code, the QR code on your screen, to have your say with that, because that makes it all very simple. If it works, that would be very, very good. Much appreciated. Have a go. Maybe what we should do with that voting system is to make it, run it as a competition prize. You know, that you get money or something if you enter.
Oh, that'll get people voting.
That's what we should be doing as well.
We don't need to bribe people, Eamonn.
Oh, I think we might. I think we might. 2 minutes past 8.
Our top story this morning, the Prime Minister is to urge European leaders to unite to protect their borders, adding that the current international migration system's broken.
Now, during the meeting in Reykjavik, he will also meet with the head of the European Court of Human Rights, where he'll push for changes to the rule that allows judges to block deportation flights.
His focus on border control follows a speech from his Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, yesterday, seen by some Tory MPs as a challenge to the PM's authority. Well, let's get the views of political reporter Olivia Utley this morning. It's an interesting juxtaposition, this, isn't it? You've got this NatCon conference going on, day 2 today, and you've also got the Prime Minister going out there almost sort of doubling down on his policy in, not necessarily in response, but just to prove his credentials, I suppose, in the whole debate around migration.
Well, yeah, it's fascinating what's going on, because Rishi Sunak has made it his mission over the past 7 months since he became elected to tackle illegal migration, so there's people coming over in small boats. And today he is doubling down, as you say, on that mission, saying that essentially human rights are under threat by the small boats. So actually the more humane thing to do is to stop the small boats, because it breaks up the gangs of people smugglers. Well, that's all very well, says his Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, but she's beginning to sound as though she thinks that the bigger problem is actually legal migration to the UK, which is something that Rishi Sunak hasn't really addressed at all. So I was at Suella Braverman's speech yesterday. She didn't exactly say anything new, but what was quite interesting was the timing of this speech, because she was saying, we know that the migration figures for this year are due to come out in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we're expecting to see legal migration between 700,000 and 1 million. Now, that is pretty extraordinary when you think that just, 10, 15 years ago, David Cameron was talking about getting numbers down into the tens of thousands. And the fact that she has decided to make legal migration her focus, while Rishi Sunak is very busy tackling illegal migration, suggests that there is a bit of a split.
Sure, there is a split, but surely her job is to tackle both. I mean, she can't put all the blame on the Prime Minister for this, can she?
Well, exactly. And actually, there's a story on the front of the Telegraph today suggesting that Suella Braverman was warned that this was coming, and that a Home Office policy document created for the new Prime Minister and his new cabinet last August suggested 12 policy levers to bring down legal migration. And it says that actually only one of them is actually being talked about at the moment, and that's the one to reduce the number of dependents that students who are coming here can bring over on their visa. There are plenty of other policy levers which don't seem to be being talked about. That said, it does sound like Suella Braverman there's a split in the cabinet, and Suella Braverman is trying to fight her corner, and it sounds as though she's being shouted down by Jeremy Hunt, the Chancellor. What she wants to do is raise the amount that someone can come here. If you're earning £26,000 at the moment, you're counted as a skilled worker and you can come over here. She wants to raise that to £33,000, but Jeremy Hunt, who obviously wants to fill the black hole in public finances, wants to keep as many young, fit migrants earning money in the UK as possible. So I think that's where the tension lies, and why Suella Braverman feels that she has the sort of moral authority, as it were, to have a go at Rishi Sunak, although very subtly.
Speaking of undermining authority, you've got all of this going on with the Home Secretary and this NAT conference going on. You've got Liz Truss heading over to Taiwan today, under no official capacity whatsoever at all. And given the potential to inflame a very fraught situation there, we saw it happen with Nancy Pelosi when she visited the country. How annoyed will Downing Street be about this?
I expect very annoyed indeed. It's what Liz Truss has been building on ever since she left office. What she seems to want to do, and I've spoken to people close to Liz Truss, is have a sort of foreign policy legacy. She was the Foreign Secretary, and what she wants to do is be the person who is tough on China. And so what this speech is going to be doing today is saying what she's been saying for months and months, which is Britain should get tougher on China, a position which is much easier to hold when you're not in government and you're not having to deal with the realities of dealing with it with a global China every day. So it's quite easy for her to say what she's saying, and I think it will certainly annoy Downing Street. But she knows that within the Conservative Party there are plenty of really ardent China hawks. Ian Duncan-Smith, who's very influential among them, who will react very positively to everything that she's saying.
And just on the issue of international politics, before we let you go, we're expected, I think it's the I newspaper this morning, saying that the UK is expected to support Ukraine's entry into NATO, which is a huge, huge foreign policy change and out of step with the whole of the rest of Europe and has the potential to inflame Russia. Have you heard any more about this?
Well, it's very interesting because, as you say, it is completely out of step with what everyone else has been saying. Obviously, if you bring Ukraine into NATO, then when Russia attacks Ukraine, then NATO is under obligation to act on Russia. And, you know, that causes the potential for World War III. I mean, is it that the British government is just trying to show that they are prepared to lead on Ukraine? But it'll be really interesting to see how this plays out, because at the moment it seems like a pretty extraordinary foreign policy position.
OK, Olivia, thank you.
The time is 8 minutes past the hour of 8, and Prince Harry set to face yet another legal battle today, this time against the Home Office over security provisions for him and his family when they are in the UK. Let's go to Paul Hawkins. He joins us live from the Royal Court of Justice. Tell us more, Paul.
Yeah, so this is Prince Harry taking on the Home Office, who essentially wrote to him in February 2020, particularly the bit of the Home Office called the Executive Committee for the Protection of Royalty and Public Figures, otherwise known as RAVEC. Now, they wrote to Prince Harry saying that since you are withdrawing from full royal duties and you're stepping back from public life and you're going to be based abroad, we can't guarantee you the same degree of personal police protection when you arrive in the UK. Harry offered to pay for it himself, but that offer was also rejected. In the autumn of 2021, he then started legal proceedings against the Home Office to review that decision by RAVEC. Fast forward to July 2022, last summer, a judge granted him permission to seek a judicial review of RAVEC's decision. Harry offered a number of reasons. The judge upheld some of those reasons, and that's where we arrive at the High Court today for what they call a preliminary hearing to see whether it will go to a full hearing. So Harry's reasons for getting a judicial review of RAVEC's decision, which that judge last summer upheld, were that he should have been told about RAVEC's policy before its decision in February 2020. And the judge also said it was arguable whether the Duke should have had the opportunity to make representations direct to RAVEC, including the opportunity to comment on other matters RAVEC considered. So we're going to hear a hearing that should take about an hour today, and we should get a decision at the end of it about whether it will go to a full hearing. Meanwhile, around the back of the Royal Courts of Justice, in Court 15 of the Rolls building, his ongoing trial continues against the Mirror Group newspapers over allegations of phone hacking. So Prince Harry keeping the lawyers and the Royal Courts of Justice busy today.
That's got to be a first, a royal history first, have a double case at the High Court. Paul, with that, thank you very much.
Well, must be good business being a lawyer associated with Harry, isn't it? We stay with the royals. Prince Andrew, we hear, has demanded a summit with the King in the ongoing row over plans to evict him from his home Royal Lodge.
Yes, the Duke of York is said to be fearful that the royal family might be about to switch off his utilities to try and get him out.
They're going to cut him off by the utilities, aren't they?
This is the allegation. Let's speak to the royal commentator Jenny Bond about all of this. I mean, it almost sounds like sort of he's trying to impose squatters' rights on Royal Lodge, Jenny.
Well, he's a very long-standing squatter. He's been there 20 years. I mean, I think this is nonsense that they're going to cut off the utilities. The fact of the matter is that the King does want to regulate the many houses that he owns and are part of the Crown estate and make better obvious use of them. Now, Royal Lodge has 30 rooms. Andrew is nominally at least a single man, though his ex-wife, they're the most happily divorced couple you remember in the world, Fergie does live there as well in a separate wing. And so it's understood that they have been offered, or at least Andrew's been offered, the smaller property, Frogmore Cottage, which was Harry and Meghan's. But that's just had a lovely renovation, £2.4 million, do you remember? It's got 5 bedrooms. I think it's pretty nice on the Windsor estate. But Andrew is resisting going there because I think he feels that, well, I was going to say a bit beneath him. I'm not sure that's true. I mean, I have a little bit of sympathy. If you live somewhere for 20 years, you've brought your children up there, you're really happy there, you know, you're not going to be filled with joy at the prospect of being told to move by your big brother.
Yeah, and there's a lot of sort of, it's like a little game of chess. They're all moving around, aren't they? The theory is that if he moves out, then the Waleses can move in. But there was also a school of thought that they might actually opt for Windsor Castle, which was Her Majesty the Queen's favourite. And, you know, King Charles has no intention of heading there. Can you shed any light on that?
It's a nice position to be in, isn't it, really? Would you like a 30-room house? Would you like a castle? Not options open to many of us. I think they feel that, well, I know that they would like to bring their children up in a relatively normal, inverted commas, surroundings. And that is not a castle. At the moment, they are in quite a small house, Adelaide Cottage. It's only 4 bedrooms. It's very, very lovely, but they're probably, pushing at the walls a little bit because there's, if they're a family of 5 and they have to have security. So the obvious move would be for them to go to Royal Lodge, still part of the Crown estate. So I think that's the manoeuvring that's going on, but Andrew does appear to be kicking and screaming about it.
Yeah, well, as you say, we can have some sympathy with them on the whole situation because all of this seems to be changed just for the sake of it. Front page of the Mail today and a big page on page 3 concerns the Queen's dresser, Angela Kelly. She's been biffed out as well from the Windsor estate. How many houses are there on the Windsor estate, for goodness sake?
There are many houses, but Angela, the understanding is that Angela, yes, she has moved up north, but that the King, quietly, without publicity, paid for the new house for Angela and has looked after her. And I think that must be true because she was such a close confidant of the well, more than a confidant, a real friend, as well as dresser of the late Queen. So I think she has been looked after. But I think Charles is very aware of the optics of this, of having so many properties. And so the reshuffling is going on. And of course, at a Royal Lodge, the security costs are huge because it's a very big place. And King Charles is footing Andrew's security bills now because Andrew's a bit stuck for the odd penny or the odd million. And so Charles is helping out. And the security costs at the other cottage, Frogmore, would be much cheaper.
Jenny, I don't know if you heard our reporter Paul Hawkins at the Royal Courts of Justice just then. He was talking about the case with the Home Office, but he was referencing the Mirror Group case that's also going on simultaneously, unprecedented, I'd imagine, in terms of royal legal cases. But I just wanted to get your take on what we heard in court yesterday. Eamonn Scobie was giving evidence in this Mirror Group case, and he was talking about how he was taught how to hack phones back in 2002 whilst he was on work experience. And he was asked quite a lot about his relationship with Harry yesterday.
Who Scobie was.
What did you make of it all?
Well, we must take Eamonn Scobie at his word. He said he is not a mouthpiece for the Sussexes. He is simply a journalist who is focusing on one particular area of the royal job, and I don't disbelieve him at all. As to his claims that he was shown as an intern, a young intern at the Mirror, how to hack a phone, or at least told how it could be done, but he thought it immoral and absolutely did not do it. Well, we've got only his word for that, and really it's for a judge to decide whether that's to be believed, not me.
OK, Jenny Bond, always good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks, Jenny. The time, 16 minutes past 8 o'clock. What else is happening news-wise? Here we go.
The government's pledging to put more British produce on supermarket shelves and plates. The proposal includes a bid to ensure farmers can get a fair price for their produce, with the Prime Minister saying supporting food producers is essential for economic growth.
Royal College of Nursing leader will give a speech urging the Prime Minister to enter negotiations to end the strikes. Pat Cullen will say the NHS and social care system is sailing dangerously close to the wind.
Up to 1 in 7 bus services across England could be cut if government funding's not extended. The deal to keep services running expires at the end of June, and operators planning to cancel or change routes are required to give at least 6 weeks' notice, with pressure for a new agreement to be secured by Friday.
There's bus situations. I mean, I don't use the bus, but...
Especially rural buses.
Yeah, to people who are dependent on them, I mean, it must be an absolute nightmare if you were thinking the service was going to be cut. As you say, village to village, hamlet to hamlet, whatever, hamlet to big town, whatever it happens to be. And, you know, everybody says, oh, have you not got an app? Get an Uber or whatever. That's not the answer to everything, and not everybody can afford that sort of thing. So bus services, although London always amazes me. London, yes, I suppose at rush hour buses are full. The rest of the day, you never see anybody on a bus. And you see lots of buses, loads of buses in London, but nobody on them.
Not enough people using our public transport, although, as you say, it's picked
but there's
up a lot
nothing as nice as a
post-pandemic.
bus ride. You know, when you get on a bus ride.
I always like sitting up high in the bus. Good view.
On the top floor on the front window.
Oh, no, definitely not.
No, why not?
Well, that's where all the bridges get hit and things.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, the trees.
That's true, that's true. But when I used to take the bus to school, of course, everybody went upstairs to smoke. It was,
what? On the bus?
Oh, my word. It was just a layer of blue smoke. And, you know, everybody in the morning, you know, 7:30 in the morning, 7:45, and that was just the women, you know, sitting, huffing and puffing and blowing fag smoke all around the place.
Actually, I think I caught the train to school, and I remember the smoking on the train on the way to school. If you got stuck in the smoking carriage, you'd stink.
Well, the worst smoke that I ever had on a bus was when the IRA came on board with petrol bombs and burnt it with rifles and petrol bombs and said, everybody off for commandeering this for the Irish Republican Army. And then I ran down to school and I ran up and my headmaster president was reading his morning prayers and I said, Father, I'm sorry I'm late. I said, with all that smoke and the bus blows up and I said...
You must have been so glad.
That was the bus. I said, that's the bus I was on, but don't worry, Father, I'm okay. And he said, detention, that was it. Nowadays, I would have had a counsellor.
PTSD training.
Yes, and a counsellor for 2 years, or whatever. Knife crime, awful, terrible, awful, ghastly thing. We talk about it again and again and again. This week is National Knife Crime Awareness.
Yeah, and it highlights the risks, which are huge, but also the consequences and the fact that really it is completely preventable. Our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, has been speaking to those trying to encourage people to give up their weapons.
They've been stabbed and they've been killed. So now one of your friends is dead.
9 years ago, Byron Heighton's brother, John Joe, was brutally stabbed to death. As a result, Byron launched the JJ Effect, dedicating his life to educating people about knives and the horrific impact they can have.
This one was taken off a 13-year-old, extremely sharp. I've got stories of kids buying and selling knives, 3 foot, 2 foot long for as little as a £5. But then when you leave the classroom, they're all in tears, they're crying, they're coming in mass amounts, wanting photos, and oh my God, and then we get suicide emittals and we get parents emailing me saying, oh my God, my child won't stop talking about that presentation, what you've done is amazing. And that was a desired effect.
Byron now works with knives every single day day, helping young people to understand the danger in his own unique way.
What I say to people is, don't be that person that's going to be bleeding out, screaming, please ring my mum, please ring my dad, I'm sorry, begging for forgiveness, when all that consequence of your actions that you've got yourself into have now led you to this point. Sadly, you might be dying. They kill someone, can he go to prison? Yeah.
This week is National Knife Crime Awareness Week, and the key word here is awareness. Knife attacks can happen at any time, in any place, in a school, in a workplace, in the community. But with better education, there's a higher chance of prevention. As part of this, twice a year, each of the 43 police forces in England and Wales partake in Operation Sceptre, a national campaign focused on tackling knife crime. In Lancashire, despite figures recently decreasing, they say their work to combat this issue will never stop.
In Lancashire, we do knife crime work every week of the year. We don't just do it specifically for Operation Sceptre. But what we do is bring all of those tactics together in one intense week, twice a year.
In 2022, England and Wales saw 49,265 offences involving a knife or sharp object. It's hoped now that this campaign will encourage people to put down their knives.
If you carry a weapon, you are more likely to be involved in violence and therefore more likely to have that weapon used on yourself. And the impact of that, not just on yourself, but your families and other members of the communities, is catastrophic. So please do not do it. Seek help, speak to people around why you're carrying the weapon in the first place, and we can get you that support.
How else can this knife get you in trouble then?
For Byron, nothing can bring back his brother. But now he works to educate and prevent similar tragedies from tearing other families apart. Sophie Reaper, GB News.
Look, there's also a case in Ayr today where a young lad at a caravan park was tasered by police because he was brandishing a knife. He was 11 years of age. We were asking, was there any sympathy with all of that? And I think it's fair to say, Isabel, no.
Yes, Robert
No.
says Jamie Bolger's killers were only 10. Do not feel sorry for an 11-year-old. Scott says an 11-year-old can stab you just as easily as a 30-year-old.
I can't imagine that the police officer just pulled out a taser and fired it because he felt like it. Kids can be frustrating, but isn't it just that Scotland banned smacking a few years ago? So you can't smack a child, but you can't taser them. An interesting conundrum with that one. But Henrik says an 11-year-old using a knife is no different to an adult using a knife. Ultimately, a knife's a deadly weapon. In my view, the real question to be asked is the lack of parenting at home. But basically, you think 11 shouldn't be a barrier to being tasered.
Stay with us. After this, we'll be discussing Liverpool's impressive 3-0 victory over Leicester. Paul Coit will have all the details.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. 8:27. Still to come on today's programme.
8:45, we're going to a petrol station, which is drivers coming from miles around because the petrol's so cheap. Well, the diesel, I think, is so cheap particularly. And they say, well, we can do it. We can knock 25p off. Supermarkets and bigger chains, why can't you do the same?
And at 9:15, it's Mental Health Awareness Week, so we'll be speaking to Olympian turned personal trainer Sarah Lindsay. She gives us her tips on how she handles anxiety and pressure.
OK, and you can give us your tips how you handle anxiety and pressure. I've got to go through it every single day. It's a task, but there we go.
Have you ever suffered anxiety or
Yes,
pressure?
you make me suffer anxiety.
I do not.
What?
With my WhatsApps. Stop reading the paper, I'm talking to you.
Yes.
Have you ever suffered anxiety?
Not
really,
not overly. No, but yes.
Good.
There's certain pressures come on your life. I think the past few years of my life has been very angst-ridden, and a lot of that's just due to my own health and my lack of manoeuvrability. I've got to go through the airport today. I'm not looking forward to that.
Oh,
you know,
This is my last show with you this week.
Oh yeah. Well, that's suddenly my anxiety's relieved. It's
No,
lifted.
suddenly mine's gone up.
It's lifted. Give us a ring. Of course, I also lied to you. I say give us a ring, but you can't give us a ring. We're not interested in you giving us a ring. We don't want you to get in touch.
Now, the reason he's rifling through the papers is trying to get to the back pages.
No, I'm not trying to get cockchafers. Right. Have you ever come across a cockchafer? Have you? Terrible, because apparently these bugs are planted. They go and they hibernate for 3 years. Look how scary looking they look.
They're not called that.
They're called... Sorry.
Oh, yeah, they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you think? I make up the news, do you?
Pesky bugs terrorising homes.
Cockchafers. And they've buried themselves all over your garden and in your woodwork and whatever, and they can lay up to 80 eggs 8 inches beneath the soil, and then they hatch, and then they... Look how disgusting that is.
Yeah, well, most insects are disgusting, but they are necessary. Is this a invader?
It's an invader, and it's the whole... There's an editorial here on it and whatever. Watch out, there are cockchafers about. So don't get your hands on those, Isabel. Okay. Awful. Will we look at the back pages now?
Oh, that's a good idea. Here's the mirror.
OK. Leicester, Kurt to shreds. Liverpool's Curtis Jones pushes the Foxes closer to the relegation drop zone. He hit 2 last night there in the 3-0 win for Liverpool. In the Times, Arteta plotting £200 million spending spree for Arsenal as he looks to sign defensive midfielder Declan Rice. And finally, The Guardian features the Professional Footballers Association. Now, they have a very interesting proposal. Lots of pitch invasions, lots of fans coming on, having their say, pushing players and managers on the subs bench about. And the footballers are saying, hey, we've got to have the right to use reasonable force against these guys that come on and do all of this sort of thing. I have this written into my contract for Paul Coyte. If he misbehaves in any way, reasonable force will be used against him.
I thought it said you could punch me full in the face. Should there be? Is that what it is?
Same thing.
OK,
same
fine.
thing.
OK.
But you know,
that's how far away I'm sitting from you today.
That situation, we have got these guys that can come on, they think they're the big I am, I can do this, I can do that. A smash in the gob would sort them out, really, wouldn't it?
You know what? I could try and be correct about it and say, you know, there should be stewards around. But you know what? If someone runs on the field of play, which is illegal anyway, and then goes up to assault...
Yeah. Sort them out. That's what we think about that. Now, listen, really looking bad for Leicester last night. Liverpool still got a chance for that Champions League place. But Leicester,
really
out of games.
I mean, Liverpool now 7 on the trot. I mean, talk about leave it late. I don't know why all of a sudden everything's turned around. Terence Trent D'Arby. You remember Terence Trent D'Arby?
Great singer.
Terence Trent D'Arby, fantastic singer, terrible footballer, and then Trent Alexander-Arnold. Terrible singer but marvellous footballer. So anyway, Trent, I've done that once before. Isn't that ridiculous? Am I showing my age? But anyway, they've moved him into midfield and, you know, they were saying if you let me stay, and he has stayed in midfield and that's where it's been and it's working for him and they were terrific. He's got a fantastic free kick yesterday and Liverpool looking great, but Leicester are in serious trouble. Newcastle away. They've got to play next Monday, so I can't see anything coming from that. And then they end up with West Ham at home. So I think looks like Leicester are going to be down.
Looks bad.
Does, absolutely.
Champions League, you've got the two Milan teams tonight. Now, it looks as if Manchester City play it right, they could be facing one of these teams in the final.
Do you know how they play? Because you know they both play at the San Siro, Inter Milan and AC Milan. So they both share the same ground and have done since the year dot. But do you know how they do the changing room situation?
No.
So what they have, for example, a huge Champions League game, because obviously one's going to be at home, the other one's going to be away, although if you think you're playing at the same ground, you're both at home. Well, but what they do is they change the ends, but they have 3 dressing rooms at the San Siro. So the fact that Inter Milan are the home team, they get their home dressing room with, you know, with all their stuff inside, you know, so it all feels very homely. AC Milan are not allowed to use their home dressing room, which is another dressing room. They have to go into a third away dressing room, and usually and they do it in all big clubs now. The home dressing room is very plush, all fantastic. You've got your jacuzzis and ice baths and everything. The away dressing room, a hook, a chair, not very comfortable. So even though they're playing in their own stadium, they have to go to the away dressing room. But Inter Milan, 2-0 up, and it looks like it will be them. I mean, it's going to take a lot for Milan, as they would call it, AC Milan, to actually turn that over. But they will play, as you say, either Manchester City or Real Madrid who play tomorrow night at the Etihad.
We go to the Championship and the playoff semi-final second leg, Luton-Sunderland.
When was the last time Luton were in the Premier League, do you think? The top flight?
Well, when Eric Morecambe supported them.
It was just a bit after that. It was Eric Morecambe, 31. It was 31 years ago. So do you remember David Pleat dancing on the pitch at Manchester City? So 31 years ago last time.
Went to Spurs after that.
That's right, yeah. So he's always been linked with Luton. And then you've got Sunderland, another great story. 2009 was the last time they were in the Premier League. They've just come up from League One, so they're in the Championship, and who knows what a great story it would be for them to finally get back up to the Premier League. But it's the winner of that will play Middlesbrough versus Coventry. Luton currently 2-1 down to Sunderland, but it's at Kenilworth Road. Another real old-style ground as well.
Now, there is a birthday you want to mark.
Yes, I'd like to try you both with this. Famous sporting birthday, and we've got a picture, I think, of our famous sporting birthday person. Great gymnast. We're going back to 1972. Olga Korbut. Do you remember Olga Korbut?
Olga Korbut, yes.
Gold medals that you're giving the eyes there, is you don't remember Olga Korbut?
I was not born for 10 years after this.
That doesn't make any difference.
No, she doesn't do
It makes no difference whatsoever.
Right.
Okay.
3 gold medals, 1972, the Olga flip, Or the Corbett flip that she used to do.
Okay, yes,
which
right,
was
the
then-
Fosbury flip, when we taught us about this.
But it was made illegal, wasn't it?
Was it made illegal?
Yeah, I don't think.
What, and just around the world?
Too dangerous, yeah.
Oh, let's
It was
see
on
Here we
feet
go.
and then back flip. Anyway, there we look at her.
No,
Unbelievable.
Paul, honestly, I'm pretty sure I'm going to tell you that this was regarded as so dangerous.
Look at that. There it comes. And there, that is it. That's the Corbett flip.
I'm pretty sure it was outlawed.
Really? Because I'm still doing it. So you're saying I could be arrested for doing this. But how old do you reckon she is today? Olga Corbett's birthday. Lives in Phoenix, Arizona these days.
So what?
56.
Wait a minute. This
56.
was the 72 Olympics.
It was 1972 Olympics.
Right. So
You have to do the
basically,
math.
if we go back 50, I'd say, gosh, she's going to be 70.
68 today.
Oh.
68 today. Lives in Phoenix.
Not impressed with that.
Very good.
I was only 2 years out.
Look, there she is.
And there she is today. There she is today.
Wow.
Gosh.
Thinking about doing the flip, but knowing that she could get arrested if she does it. And there she looks great. She's 68.
Yeah.
I
And
don't
there's
know
Olga
a single
Corbett.
former gymnast who doesn't look great in their dotage. They always look great. I think of Jackie Beltrao, our old colleague, former Olympic gymnast. We've got one coming up
She wasn't
later
an
on in the
Olympic gymnast.
Yes,
She wasn't. She flew ribbons about the
That's
place.
a gymnastic sport.
Danced with ribbons. That's not being an Olympic
She did
gymnast.
the splits and the tumble turning and all that. I don't know, swimming. But anyway.
Lovely description of gymnastics there. That was just...
You know what I mean.
Thank you, my friend. Got to leave it there.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. Incidentally, just one thing I want to bring up, which we won't have a chance
Yes, sir.
for the next week or so. See, this Man United takeover, we're talking about Arsenal getting involved in the transfer market, whatever. I am seriously worried that if they don't sort this out, who are we going to be in the market
Well,
for?
I'm worried for you that maybe this all smoke and mirrors because it's a year on. So how comes now the deal still hasn't been done?
Still
It's
hasn't been
dragging
done.
on and on. Are they just trying to do that to say, you know what,
Just
we'll
wanted
do a
to say
deal.
that.
We'll do a deal, but we're not quite ready yet. We'll
Just
see.
wanted to say that. We'll talk about it more in depth
we
when I
should.
come back.
I will be ready for
Thank you, my friend.
Stay with us. We're going to discuss Vodafone's decision to cut 11,000 jobs worldwide in order to cut costs. We'll be talking about that with Kevin Schofield and Davinia Taylor and the rest of the day's papers next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So you've only gone and got people sending in pictures of cockchafers now. The inbox is full of photographs of them. This one's come in from Claire.
Incidentally, it's an insect, it's not an act.
She hasn't sent in a picture. She says, if you want to see a cockchafer, leave the lights on and the window open on a warm May or June evening. They're clumsy flyers, but beautiful up close. Almost the fantasy beetle that a child would draw.
They're a bit
and then
scary looking.
Peter Wandler says, I just laugh at Isabel's face as she holds her breath as to what Eamonn might say next. Her blood pressure should be shown as a readout at the base of the page. I think that's a great idea.
It is a great idea, but also that you doubting that I make up the term cockchafer.
Well, it's just, you know,
well, what?
Never heard it myself. But anyway,
well,
lots of people backing you up with pictures.
Yes,
so.
Good.
Anyway, we are going through the papers this morning, one last time with the political editor at Huffington Post, HuffPost UK, Kevin Schofield, and the actress and wellbeing guru, Davinia Taylor. And Kevin, we start with you. Breaking news in the last hour from the City. The Vodafone's to cut 11,000 jobs worldwide. And the company's chief executive making that announcement this morning, all to cut costs.
Yep, absolutely. Saying that the firm's performance of late has not been good enough. To consistently deliver, she says Vodafone must change and we must simplify our organisation, which is code for we've got to get rid of a lot of people. And yeah, 11,000 worldwide. Now, obviously, this will impact in this country as well. Now, figures out this morning also show that unemployment is coming down, which is obviously good news, but this isn't good news. The company's Newbury, Berkshire headquarters probably going to be, unfortunately, people losing their jobs there. So, again, the tech industry is struggling at the moment, and yeah, this is another example of it, I think.
But you just wonder why, what's going wrong in the telecommunications industry that they'd have to cut, that's a massive amount of jobs, 11,000.
Well, yeah, quite. I mean, it's obviously a highly competitive market, Vodafone competing against other telecoms companies. Yeah. Obviously, according to the new boss, not doing a good enough job, so the only way to deal with that is to cut costs and become more streamlined, which, you know, might look good on a spreadsheet, but not great if you're one of the people, unfortunately, that lose their job.
Well, on the subject of cutting costs, Davinia, we go to what's available in school canteens. How's cost cutting affecting them?
OK, so this is really upsetting me. So it seems to be in The Guardian's reporting that meat out, beans in, as caterers struggle to keep up the supply for school meals. So basically, they're substituting meat, which is a bioavailable protein, for this, what I might consider just junk food, which is lentils and beans.
See, now I'm really surprised.
See, Davinia, you are totally against the mainstream thinking, which is meat is
the bad one.
Is the bad one, not only for the planet, but also for your bowel, and especially if it's processed meat.
And the trouble is it's been debunked, but because the food industries are so powerful, these cheaper, as we can see, cheaper food sources are just whittling the way in, just the way oats did, just the way grains did, just the way rapeseed oil did.
Sorry, I'm with Isabel. I thought oats, grains, whatever. I thought this was all...
to be high in fibre and...
Well, if you ever have, like, beans, I mean, what happens to your gut?
Yeah, a bit windy.
Yeah, exactly. So that's an inflammatory process happening in your gut. Ooh. And you also... It turns it... It's a carbohydrate. It will turn into a sugar, which is glucose, which then is stored as body fat if you don't use it as a fuel. Fair enough if you're running a marathon, but most of us aren't doing.
Yeah, but you can say the same with meat. No, if you're consuming a fat, that will be stored in your body as fat if you're not burning it off as fuel. I mean, all energy will be stored in your body and not
Not as ferociously as glucose. You generally can metabolize these good fats, as in animal source fats, far more efficiently. The body recognizes it, uses it, metabolizes it, and it's out. And protein, so many children aren't getting enough decent protein. I mean, I drive to school every day, and I literally, because it's actually saying it's affecting rural areas more, I can knock over sheep on my way to school. We have the best grass in the world because of our rain. That's what we should be proud of. That's why British beef is exported all over the world. We are not getting it. We export it to China and we import these grains like soy, which is actually an endocrine disruptor. It messes with your hormones. It's ferocious stuff, and we need to get our lamb and our sheep back into our diet.
So your problem with this is what?
They're not getting decent heme iron, so you can't get... The whole idea that you can get iron from spinach is rubbish. It's not heme iron. And you're not getting B12. B12 is so important for your mental health.
I'm on B12
shots.
Supplements.
Good.
Yeah.
Good, excellent.
Yeah.
That'll really help you with your energy, mental energy.
Yeah.
But you can really get it from, like, say, beef liver. I put beef liver in the kids' spaghetti bolognese. They don't taste it, but it is the most nutrient-dense form of nutrition on the planet.
I put lentils in my kids' spaghetti bolognese. Try my husband's horror, but deliberately, because I want pulses in their diet. But I don't think there is consensus on what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. I do think there are different opinions on it, and
absolutely
not everyone subscribes to that school of thought. But interesting to see that schools are finding this the cheaper option.
Isabel,
do you have a view on it, Kevin?
Well, that's the thing. That's the problem, isn't it?
What do I love?
Balance. I don't moderate anything, so...
Well, you know.
But, I mean, obviously, school budgets have been cut, and if beef and lamb and other forms of meat are more expensive, and they can bring in, beans as a substitute, basically.
The profit is phenomenal on beans. The profit is phenomenal, not on beef.
That's going to be more pressing.
Let's talk about drugs policies at unis. This is front page of the Times. It's concerning them. What's the story?
Yeah, so the Times have done an investigation, which they do a lot of, and they do really well, showing that, well, it's a twofold, this story. One is the number of students using ketamine, which is a horse tranquilizer, has gone up massively, a surge in deaths from ketamine, which is terrifying if you've got kids at university or approaching that age. However, they say at the same time, universities are softening their drugs policies under pressure from pressure groups, basically, who say they should need to take a more realistic approach rather than saying just say no. It's more like if you're going to take drugs sensibly, take them in groups. So
in moderation.
In moderation. Or if you get into trouble, have a friend with you. Now, hopefully the friend isn't on the same dose of drugs.
Which is likely,
in which case they're not going to be much help at all.
Crazy advice.
But yeah, they're saying that there's an organisation called Students for Sensible Drug Policy UK, which has been campaigning hard on this new sort of more liberal attitude towards drugs, which is now being adopted, it says, by Universities UK, and they've been criticised for taking this approach when deaths from ketamine are
It's an interesting debate. I think you can apply it to all different sort of types of parenting or approaches to these sorts of things. I mean, my parents always took the view... There were parents that said, you may not go to the pub. Absolutely, no one's allowed to go to the pub because we were underage. So the kids would go and drink under bridges and things. And my mum would say, just come to our house and you can have a drink and at least I know where you are and I can keep an eye on you. And I do think there has to be a school of thought that these things are going to happen whether we like it or not. And just to stick our fingers in our ears and say, it's illegal, it's not happening, doesn't actually help. This actually is some kind of realistic approach to trying to...
Well, I know somebody who works in the hospitality industry and they do parties at people's homes and things. And he said to me, ketamine is just... every day, it's just normal use, that people are taking it all the time. Which usually what sort of life I lead. I've never been offered ketamine or anything else anywhere else, but apparently it is just...
Does it not just knock you out? Well, I mean, does it not put you to sleep? What is the point at a party?
If a horse tranquilizer does make you think, it probably would make you
we talk about the deaths, but I've interviewed people who've taken it who actually, almost to fate worse than death, have lifelong bladder problems and have had to have major surgery on their bladders. They lose continence and all sorts of things as a result of misuse of ketamine.
But they're actually using ketamine in medicinal situations to rewire the brain. So you have a one-off dose of it under medical supervision and you have a psychiatrist work through. I suppose it's like a trip to rewire the brain network to get out of depression. So maybe it's just flushing the market. So maybe there's an opportunity to say, this part is good for you, but this is a dose that you should not dance with,
definitely that debate going on with drugs, isn't there?
Yeah.
Its use in treating people with PTSD and depression, whether it's mushrooms or
Yuck, yeah, horrible.
MDMA or whatever it might be. But
Kevin, can we talk about this story in The Sun about this food summit, Downing Street and supermarket bosses and whatever? Food prices soaring, the inflation in food, I think, is over 20%. Are these supermarkets profiteering or not? Do we know?
Well, that is the suspicion, you know, that they are keeping... Because while inflation very slowly is starting to come down, not as quickly as the government would like, or we would all like, food inflation is still, as you say, incredibly high. And that is probably the main rate that most people notice, you know, when they do their weekly shop or even go to the shop every day, they'll notice that food prices are still incredibly high. And you're right, the government is going to put pressure on supermarket bosses to try and bring these prices down, because this is the type of thing, you know, during the local elections, I spoke to MPs who were out on the doorstep and they were saying every door they went to, it's the cost of living. That's what people are most worried about, you know, and that is the type of thing that the government have to get. If there's to stand any chance of getting re-elected in the next election, they have to try and get on top of this. And The Sun has analysed traditional British meals. Cottage pie, £1.92 more expensive. The ingredients up 19%. And a full English breakfast, £5.36 more expensive. That's 22% up. Spaghetti bolognese, 26%. Vegetable curry, 27%. And these are fairly staple meals that, you know, most people eat, and it's really, really worrying.
Well, guys, we're going to stay on inflation and the price of consumer goods now. We say goodbye to you two, but we're going to talk about fuel prices now, so thank you very much indeed. The Competition and Markets Authority has launched an investigation into whether we are being overcharged for fuel and groceries, as Kevin was just alluding to.
Yeah, and they found that supermarket fuel prices were roughly 5p more expensive per litre in 2022 than pre-pandemic levels.
So the most honest petrol station owner is fighting back against petrol giants by charging you 25p less. So let's go to Ricky Allman. He's the finance director, and Dave Roberts, the MD at DA Roberts Fuels and Garages. Guys, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Morning.
The big question is, how do you do it?
Well, you know, we know what we pay for it, and I know it's not 25p cheaper than anyone else by any means. We're all really more or less on the same buying price. You know, we fetch our own from the refineries. That does help a penny a litre, but that's about it. So they seem to put the diesel up more than the petrol, to be honest. So why that is, I don't know.
So I suppose then you'd answer that by posing the question to the supermarket, saying, you know, why don't they bring the price down? And do you think they're in cahoots?
Yeah, there's no reason why the price should be as high as it is. It's been falling for a couple of months now, and we've been dropping our prices on a daily basis. So the reason why they're not is unknown to us.
And Dave, what sort of reaction are you getting from your customers? I mean, there has to be genuine surprise there.
What reaction are we getting from the customers?
Well, there's lots more coming, isn't there? You know, they're queuing up to get filled up, and then a lot of them say, well, how are you doing it? And we say, well, you know, everybody's entitled to do their own price. But, you know, it's whatever you put there. And
we have our set margin that we need to make, and that's what creates our pump price. We don't look at what anyone else is selling at. We just do our own thing, and the customers love it.
And do you find there is such a thing as sort of customer loyalty? You know, do you think that this is going to pay dividends in the long run, that people will see that actually at a time when people are going through a cost of living crisis, you guys didn't exploit them and will come to you for years to come?
Yeah, well, that's quite true, yeah. Yeah, it's... they come from miles away, to be honest, but we are on the A41, and it is a busy road. So that helps as well, sort of thing. And we're easy to find, aren't we? You know, we might be in the sticks in a way, but we're on a main road, easy to find. So that helps as well.
And we're selling more and more litres.
And you're in the village of Grindley. It's a small village, Grindley Brook in Shropshire, on the A41, as you say there. But Ricky, if you're doing it, are you basically saying others could be doing this and we're all paying more than we should?
100%, yeah, they definitely could, and they should be doing it. Like I say, the price has been falling for months now, and as Dave said, we're not buying it 20-25p cheaper, a p a litre cheaper than they are. So if we can pass it on a small independent garage, why aren't the big players doing it?
But why aren't more garages doing what you're doing? I mean, even, the independent garages, why aren't there more?
I don't know. Different garages may be on different pricing mechanisms, but it's not going to be the huge differences you're seeing on the UK average is being about 154 and we're 131. There's just not that difference in what they're buying that for.
I can't think when I last saw a petrol forecourt with a 131, and we were driving back from the West Country at the weekend. We typed into our sat-nav, find the best price petrol station because we needed to fill up on the way back, and we went a little way off the road and found something a bit more affordable. It wasn't anywhere in the region of 131 a litre, let me tell you. But if I was in Shropshire, I'd be coming to you.
We would.
The most honest petrol station in the country. Thank you very much.
In Grindley Brook. Good seeing you, boys. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Thank you. There you are. It can be done. We'll have lots more leading the news right after this.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts of
Moss?
rumors. Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends were like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Unite to protect our borders, the Prime Minister will urge European leaders, as his Home Secretary is accused of undermining his authority.
Hello there, very good morning to you. It is 9 o'clock. It is Tuesday, the 16th of May. Wherever you're watching, however you're listening, this is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Thank you for your company. Here's what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak will claim today that the most vulnerable are paying the price for a broken international asylum system as he urges European leaders to crack down on illegal migration.
He'll also hold talks with the head of the European Court of Human Rights in a bid to push reform rules that allow judges to block deportation flights. It follows a speech from the Home Secretary on migration, seen as a challenge to Sunak's leadership.
The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has said new figures that show a 0.2% drop in unemployment are encouraging. Speaking earlier this morning, he added that the government's sticking to its plan to halve inflation.
The head of the Royal College of Nursing will today urge the government to get the job finished and negotiate a pay deal. Her comments come 7 days ahead of a new strike ballot, which could see nurses walking out until Christmas.
Prince Andrew's allegedly demanded a face-to-face summit with his brother, the King, in the ongoing row over plans to evict him from the Royal Lodge. The Duke of York said to be fearful the royal family might switch off utilities to try and get him out.
If you're so inclined, the Trick Awards 2023 will happen in the end of June, isn't it? End of June. And we're up for Best Multi-Channel News Programme. So there's also opportunities to vote for your Best Presenter, which hopefully will be me.
Well, you're the title holder at the moment, reigning champion. And if you would like to vote for Eamonn or indeed for our humble programme, we would be thrilled. You can do so by scanning the QR code on your screen now so you can have your say.
It'll only take a little. So the Prime Minister will today urge European leaders to unite to protect their borders, adding that the current international migration system does not work.
Yes, during the meeting that's taking place in Reykjavik, Rishi Sunak will also meet with the head of the European Court of Human Rights, where he'll push for changes to the rule that allows judges to block deportation flights.
Well, joining us now, GB News political reporter Olivia Utley with her take on all of this as to how she sees today playing out. Olivia.
Yeah, well, I was at NatCon yesterday, the Conservative conference taking place in Westminster, and I've got to say that the speech from Suella Braverman did come across as a bit of a leadership bid. What seems to be happening at the moment is Rishi Sunak is in Iceland talking about his plan to get down illegal immigration, that's stopping the small boats bill, which is going through the Lords at the moment. And he's arguing in Iceland that not stopping the small boats is actually the most inhumane thing, because it means that gangs of people smugglers just gain momentum and ruin the lives of the most desperate people. Meanwhile, the Home Secretary is standing up at this conference making a speech where she says, yes, we're tackling illegal migration, that's all very important, but she implied that the bigger issue is actually legal migration, something which the Prime Minister doesn't really seem to have got a hold on at all. So last year, in 2022, net legal migration was at 504,000, which was by far the highest, massive record-breaking number of legal migrants coming over. This year, the figures are coming out in the next couple of weeks, we're expecting to see it between 700,000 and 1 million people.
How is the legal migration justified? I know we'll say people have the right to seek asylum, or people fleeing war zones and all that sort of thing. So what is she proposing? Is she saying, right, we've got to keep an eye on this, and we've got to say we can't take everyone? What is she saying?
Well, what's interesting is when you look at the breakdown of the legal migrants coming over here, about 30% are coming for work. another sort of 20% are coming as students, and then a lot of the rest of them are coming on student visas, so the dependents of students. And that number has risen tenfold in the last 4 years. So 4 years ago it was 12,000.
Why is that a bad thing? If they're coming as students, so they're seeking to be students and they're probably not going to stay here permanently, why should we be worried about that?
Well, there is a theory that it's basically a loophole in the immigration system. So you've got students coming here on one-year master visas to do a sort of Mickey Mouse course, as they're called, bringing with them 7 dependents who then get sort of lost in the migration system and end up staying in the UK for longer than they were supposed to stay in the UK. So it's thought that this has turned into a bit of a loophole. Do some of these students really need to be bringing over such a large number of dependents? And that's one of the issues which Suella Braverman wants to tackle. Another one is she suggests, and there's certainly a big split in the Cabinet on this one, that if you're coming here on a work visa, you need to be earning, as a skilled worker, you need to be earning above £26,000. Well, that's 20% less than the median wage in this country. So Suella Braverman's suggesting upping that figure to £33,000, which is the median wage in this country, which would, she believes, weed out some of those workers who aren't really skilled workers and are really just coming here because they would rather live in the UK than their own country. Jeremy Hunt doesn't like that idea at all, because he likes to have lots of young, fit migrants adding to GDP numbers in the short term. So it's really interesting to see how this is going to play out. But from what I saw yesterday, Suella Braverman certainly does have quite a lot of support from the Tory right for cutting those legal migration numbers down.
When you say what you saw yesterday, I mean, you're talking about the vibe in the hall, you're talking about the buzz after the speeches.
I mean, Suella Braverman could barely get out a sentence without people standing ovations. I mean, obviously, it's a
Well, we need to talk about the context of this conference, because it's a relative... I mean, a lot of people might not be familiar with what NatCon is. I mean, the National Conservative Conference is actually an American construct. There have been American speakers, Conservative speakers at this event. I think it's the second time it's been held in the UK. But I've just seen commentators on social media saying this is the sort of fringe event that you might see when you've got an opposition party. But to have actual Secretaries of State giving speeches at this event is quite unusual.
Well, yes, and I think that was really the impression I got, that the speech Suella Braverman was giving yesterday sounded like the speech of someone
after you've lost an election,
auditioning to be the shadow Home Secretary after losing an election. It was very much auditioning to be the leader of the opposition after losing an election. But it felt a bit presumptive, because obviously the Conservative haven't actually yet lost an election, but it did seem to be looking towards a future in opposition.
With all of these problems for Rishi Sunak, you know, trying to sort of reassert his authority, how helpful was Zelensky's surprise visit yesterday, and how surprising was his announcement that we're hearing this morning that he will support Ukraine's bid to join NATO?
Well, most NATO countries have actually said that, in theory, when the war is over, they would support Ukraine joining NATO. But there are plenty of countries, sort of the more easterly countries in NATO, who say that just isn't enough, saying that Ukraine should join NATO when the war's over isn't enough. So hearing them come out and sort of... Obviously, Zelensky would like Ukraine to join NATO ASAP. Most leaders are saying, well, obviously that's not really practical until the war is over, because otherwise we'd end up in a position where whenever Russia strikes Ukraine, NATO would have to hit back, and that could obviously lead to a sort of World War III situation. So Zelensky is really ramping up the pressure here. And if Rishi Sunak wants to show that Britain is leading the pack on this issue, he might have to go a bit further than he would ideally like to.
Olivia, appreciate your take. Our political reporter there, Olivia Utley. Thank you. So Rishi Sunak set to host the UK's Farm to Fork Summit today. It's a conference which brings together government departments and industry leaders to thrash out issues around food security and food sustainability.
Well, let's go to our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie B to Doogie. What do you think this summit means then for trying to tackle food inflation, and also, you know, highlighting the role of an important, I suppose, critical role of farming in this country?
Good morning to you all. Welcome to Ballygan. And behind me, my female friends, me here just out of the milking parlour about 10 minutes ago. But yes, what is actually wrong with farming? There's quite a few things wrong. It's not with farming, it's with the policies that's been put in place. About 4 or 5 years ago, the World Economic Forum decided that they were going to have food innovation hubs, and they were to be based in Asia, South America, Africa and parts of Europe. Now, we were out in Holland covering the farms there. They wanted to close about 3,000 farms. And don't forget, Holland's the second biggest exporter of agri-food in the world, only second to the United States. And the United States Department of Agriculture has said this year the United States is going to lose about £33.8 billion in dairy products. So there is a problem, and it's a very serious problem. It's a problem in and around policy and how it's put together. Common agricultural policy has been missing in Britain from 2016. I'm sure you'll see all the big rapeseed, beautiful yellow flowers all across the fields. Well, when Ukraine was invaded last year, first thing that Vladimir Putin did was ban fertilizer going out of Russia. That sent prices soaring here, but it also stopped our olive oil and so forth that was coming out, sunflower oil that was coming out of Ukraine, and all the farms here then started to plant rapeseed oil. Well, the price of that has now gone from £800 a tonne in the futures market last night to about £300 to £350 a tonne. So there needs to be some policy at looking where we are going. George Eustace, I spoke to him last year, and he had said, look, wheat and grain we don't get from Ukraine. We supply our own, and the access is actually taken from Canada. Canada had a record crop of wheat last year, and it's now dropped to about £200 a tonne. So our bread and all should not be that expensive. But if we look at us behind us here now, milk prices from January have dropped 16 pence a litre at the farm gate. Now that means that farmers this year will not be putting the same amount of fertiliser in. They will not be slurrying the grounds as much because they're not going to have the same crop of silage that feeds these animals here behind us during the winter, because why would they pay for keeping them? This is the problem. There's no forward thinking with common agricultural policy in Britain, and hasn't been for so long. We're looking now at very much food price hikes in the next year.
Yeah. There could have been a policy. There hasn't been a policy. That's why, forgive me that I'm somewhat cynical when politicians get together and they say, oh, we have a great idea. We'll use more British produce. We'll help British farmers. We'll get them to have preference in supermarkets and whatever. I don't believe it. There's not the political will for it now. Amongst the farmers that you mix with and who need this help desperately, do you actually believe things will change from here on in? Do they believe things will change?
No, because it has to change now, because it's 9 months that you're talking before you sow a crop, or 2 years to bring a calf into a dairy herd at £2,000. That's a lot of money when you look at the size of a herd. So they're saying, hold on, you're making all these big claims and nothing has came through. Agriculture in Britain is in a terrible state because of lack of policy and the lack to drive it forward, and most of all, the lack of surety and food security. If we look at that fertiliser, Eamonn, we used to manufacture 50% of our own nitrogen through ICI in the Midlands. We don't do it anymore. It's all manufactured in Belarus and Russia. In fact, we pointed this out. Red diesel, you and I had this conversation 15 months ago. And Steve Krabs, I spoke to him in the Northern Show in Wales last August, and he had said to me it was a Treasury decision, not a political policy to do away with the red diesel. If you take it that food is being transported from places and it's frozen food, the price of that without red diesel is trebling.
Well, you make the case in a very impassioned way, and so many of the problems in society and with politics are to do with short-termism. We talk about it across the NHS, whether it's to do with farming. You make a great point, Doogie. Thank you.
Doogie, just before you go, see those cows, and they've all got tags in their ears and things. They've all got numbers that are scanned in computers. Do they have names, my friend?
Well, if you milk some of them in the parlour, I have milked this herd in used to milk it years ago. I'm actually standing in my mother's lane. My two daughters' horses are just up here to the right. But yeah, Yeah, they are from farm gate to plate. During the foot and mouth disease, you'll remember that lots of problems with British beef. We had this policy to stop smuggling, etc., years ago, and now it's rolled out the whole way across the UK. You can trace this animal from its birth to when it hits your plate, all because of these tags. And yes, now and again, you do have a soft spot for one or two of the cattle when they come in,
names.
but you try not to.
They get names. What sort of names do you give them?
Sometimes, yeah.
What? Give me an example of a name.
Trude or
do you have
whatever.
any called Isabel?
No, but we could make one. What's this one? 19211. That's Isabel.
Isabel.
Hello, Isabel.
Charming, charming indeed.
Beautiful udder on it.
Stop it. Enough. Thank you very much indeed. You know, you were saying when he was talking, you looked at me and you're like, I did not know that Holland was the second biggest agricultural producer after America.
Not.
But of course, you know what type of cow those were? Friesians. You know where Friesians come from?
Jersey.
Friesland in Holland.
Is that right?
Yes.
Amazing.
There you go.
I love a wee bit of education.
There you go. Do you know how many sheep there are in
Holland?
Britain?
In Britain, no idea.
22 million.
And there are 66 million people.
Exactly.
So there's one sheep for every
three of us.
That's great. Andrew Pearce is so in...
Lamb chops so expensive.
Because we import them from New Zealand.
Exactly. Ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
Talking of which, food, we're talking about the supermarket summit. The Prime Minister, I've been saying this on this show for weeks and weeks, call them in. Why are food prices so expensive in relation to what farmers are getting? Somebody's making a lot of money here, not least in the petrol provision as well. Asda used to sell it as a loss leader. They don't anymore. So is it going to achieve anything? We're also talking about tax. Biggest tax grab was in 1979 when Geoffrey Howe raised VAT from 8% to 15%. It's happening right under our noses. Institute of Fiscal Studies report, fiscal drag, freezing of the thresholds means millions more are going to be dragged into the 40p tax rate, including lots of nurses. Are they mad?
Yeah, public sector workers and...
Teachers?
Yeah,
it's just not great.
Yeah.
Tory government should be about cutting taxes. I know we've had the pandemic and all the rest of it, but look,
when they say we are the friends of business, just run a business and find out if they're your friends or not. Andrew, to the point, from 9:30 this morning. 80 years since the Dambuster raids took place. We're paying tribute to that Dambuster mission next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate. Both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 9:20. Today marks the 80 years since the 617 Squadron embarked on their mission to destroy German dams in the Ruhr Valley.
Almost half the planes were shot down. 53 men on board were killed.
Well, tonight, a Lancaster bomber, the plane that was used in the attack, will fly over London and air bases in Lincolnshire in memory of those who took part.
Our reporter Will Hollis has gone back in time to remember the Dambuster raids.
Few Second World War stories hold the power of the Dambusters raid, the bravery of the men, the brilliance of the bouncing bomb, the absolute best of Britain and its allies. In May 1943, the men of 617 Squadron flew Lancaster bombers from RAF Scampton in Lincolnshire on a mission to destroy dams at the heart of Germany. Causing catastrophic damage to the Nazi war machine, Operation Chastise catapulted 617 to international fame, particularly Wing Commander Guy Gibson, who was just 24.
Wing Commander Guy Gibson, on whom the Queen bestowed the Victoria Cross.
He famously said the squadron will either make history or be completely wiped out. Immortalised in the 1950s film, 617's exploits are a tale that Brits never tire of telling. But the men in the story are all gone. The last surviving raider, Johnny Johnson, died in December. Here he is speaking in 2018.
Always the uppermost thing in my mind was the dams raid. That had to be the outstanding part of the whole of my career.
Inventor Barnes Wallis, who created the bouncing bomb, is celebrated as one of the war's greatest minds. A prototype is displayed at the Petwood Hotel in Woodhall Spa. It became 617's home after the dam's raid.
This is a beautiful picture of a snowball fight between 617 and 627 squadrons.
Edward Mear is the hotel's historian.
Coming as they did from ordinary, sometimes terraced homes in industrial cities. And to come here, it was already like a palace to them. And they really did feel as though they'd, and I quote them, died and gone to heaven. But of course, the following evening, that's probably what a lot of them did.
53 men died in the raid. They're remembered at the 617 memorials in Woodhall High Street. Chris is part of the Squadron Association. His dad, John, joined 617 after the raid, flying missions on D-Day and Fortress Europe.
He tended to keep very quiet with the family, but he was involved in squadron reunions.
Chris says his dad spoke highly of the Dambuster men.
He was in awe of them. They were doing something which had never been done before in creating that sort of attack.
To mark the 80th anniversary, the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight will fly a Lancaster above wartime bases, including the historic Dambusters' home, Scampton. Recently, a government plan to house up to 2,000 asylum seekers at the old base has been met with backlash from locals and politicians. Back at the memorial, Chris says we must never forget what the men of 617 did in the raids.
I think it's important that we remember this anniversary and anniversaries to come because of the bravery of these men.
617 still flies in the Air Force. The pilots inside the cockpits are different, but the courage inspired by the Dambusters is still there.
They are sure to be remembered in all histories of the war. They did a magnificent job.
Will Hollis, GB News in Lincolnshire.
You know, when I look back at that footage and you think of what those men went through, I mean, so brave to enter one of those planes. Very few of them came back. You know, the ratio for those who flew and were shot down. And the whole mission was given this code name, Operation Chastise, against the Germans. And that was to hit the whole German industrial area that were fueled by the power from the dams. It was an amazing thing, the bouncing bombs that were developed for all of that. I suppose you've never watched the film.
I haven't, but they were my grandparents' generation, and I've just got the most enormous amount of respect for all of those who put country and duty before themselves and gave the ultimate sacrifice. And I do sometimes think about if we were to get into another World War situation with the way the news is presented, with the world of social media, would we have that same kind of level of commitment and duty that we saw from people in such a brave, selfless way? And I'm not sure we would.
Well, I think the thing about the Second World War was if you saw Nazism take over Europe and you knew the UK, Britain in general, was going to be invaded, that probably would make you sign up. But so many wars that we get into or conflicts we're involved in, people just don't know what are we doing there? What's this all about? But anyway, that was the Dambusters, 80 years to the day since those raids took place.
That's it from us for this morning. Breakfast will be back bright and early, 6 o'clock tomorrow. Up next, though,
it's Beverly and Andrew, and they are to the point. Have a good show.
Thank you.
And we will. We're talking supermarkets. Finally, the Prime Minister's calling in supermarket bosses to say why we're being charged so much for our food.
Yeah, we're going to talk to a fantastic farmer as well to explain it from their perspective. Knife crime in the capital under Sadiq Khan. You will not believe the number of teenagers who have lost their life to knife crime.
Shocking figures, actually. And also we're talking about inflation and unemployment.
Yeah, with Liam.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop
failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Morning, it's 9:30 on Tuesday the 16th of May. This is To The Point on GB News with Andrew Pearce and Bev Turner.
Very good morning to you. So, food price crisis. Sunak summons the food bosses to Downing Street as the cost of feeding families continues to soar.
And an analysis by the Sun newspaper reveals a can of baked beans has gone up nearly 40%. 40%! How are you coping with the cost of the supermarket shop? Get in touch via email, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
And a story that's moved on since we talked about it yesterday. Michael Gove attacks Starmer on votes for EU citizens, claiming that the Labour leader is downgrading the ultimate privilege of British citizenship and trying to rig elections.
And the taxman cometh. Nurses are now among those who are being caught in the 40p tax ban, which was originally intended for the rich. All that's to come on To The Point.
We're also going to be looking at the shocking number of knife crimes in the capital, particularly amongst teenagers. Let us know your thoughts this morning. Get involved. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email address. But first of all, here is your news with Tamsin Roberts.
Bev, thank you and good morning from the GB newsroom. It's 9:31. The Prime Minister will tell European leaders the world's most vulnerable are paying the price for unlawful migration. Addressing the Council of Europe in Iceland this afternoon, he'll say the international system for policing human trafficking isn't working and that the UK isn't the only country being affected. That's as the government tries to implement the illegal migration bill, which is currently going through the House of Lords. The new law aims to tackle small boat crossings, sending asylum seekers back home or to a third country, such as Rwanda. Meat, yoghurts and vegetables are just some of the items that have doubled in price compared to a year ago. Consumer group Which has found food inflation remains at what they're calling shockingly high levels, falling just 0.1% from March to April. The price of a pack of sausages has risen almost 95% on a year ago to £2.42. Meanwhile, Downing Street is hosting the Farm to Fork Summit. The Prime Minister is pledging farmers are getting a fair price for their produce and ensuring more of their products on supermarket shelves. 1 in 5 taxpayers could be paying higher rate income tax by 2027. Think tank the Institute for Fiscal Studies says millions of middle earners, including some teachers, nurses and electricians, can expect to be paying 40% or more. Describing it as a seismic shift to the system, the IFS says the 6-year freeze to allowances and thresholds could become the single biggest tax-raising measure since 1979. Meanwhile, jobless figures have unexpectedly risen again. Unemployment rose to 3.9% in the first 3 months of the year, up 3.8% in the previous quarter. Data from the Office for National Statistics also shows vacancies have fallen to the lowest level for 18 months, with the number of people in work slightly higher. Vodafone has revealed plans to cut 11,000 jobs globally over the next 3 years. The company says it needs to address poor performance, and the cull is part of plans to simplify the business. The job cuts will also impact the UK's headquarters in Berkshire. It comes amid a 1.3% drop in earnings to a lower than expected £12.8 billion and forecast little or no growth over this financial year. TV, online, DAB plus radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to Andrew and Bev.
Good morning, thank you for joining us. So it's day 2 of the National Conservatism Conference, with speakers including Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove, Conservative MP Sir John Hayes and more.
To talk about this is Olivia Utley, who was there yesterday. Olivia, frankly, I think more interesting than what's happening in the Conservative Conference is what's going to happen in number 10 today. Finally, I've been saying this for weeks, the PM is calling in the supermarket bosses because food inflation is at a record high, 19%. Tin of beans, the Sun has pointed out, has gone up 40% in 18 months. 40%. It's a staple part of our diet is a tin of beans. What's he going to say? What's he going to do?
Absolutely, and there's a really interesting story in The Times suggesting